Lin Yuyan was squeezed in the noisy flea market crowd, and her nose was filled with the greasy smell of old fried food and the moldy smell of second-hand stalls. The vendors around her were shouting at the top of their lungs, and the cries of children mixed with the buzzing of electric toys made her head hurt. She originally came to buy some retro accessories, but was attracted by a stall in the corner. A hunchbacked old man huddled behind a greasy canvas, with a yellowed old game console in front of him, like a relic fished out of the ruins of the last century. "Little girl, this thing is not for you young people to touch." The old man raised his head, staring directly at her with his cloudy eyes, and his voice was hoarse like the wind blowing through dry bones. His fingers, as skinny as wood, stroked the fuselage, which was covered with twisted runes, twisting and turning like living insects crawling. Several ants passing by in the market involuntarily slowed down and whispered, "Old Wong Tu is selling the cursed things again, and the buyer last month is still missing." A young mother pushing a stroller widened her eyes, quickly covered her child's ears, and pulled her husband away quickly, her face as white as a sheet. Lin Yuyan laughed out loud, feeling disdainful in her heart. She is a city girl who is full of curiosity. She loves to watch urban legend videos, so how can she be frightened by these rural superstitions? "Grandpa, how much does this game console cost?" "Torch Mountain Village?" "It sounds quite interesting, retro pixel style." She looked closer and saw that the plastic shell of the machine was mottled and peeling off, and the outline of a vague mountain village appeared on the screen, and the orange light of the torch swayed strangely. The old man's face twitched, showing his yellow teeth, and his voice lowered. 300 yuan, take it. But remember, don't clear the level. It's not a game, it's a door." His hands were shaking. When the vendors around him heard this, they all stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at Lin Yuyan. Someone murmured in a low voice, "Silly girl, you'll be in trouble if you buy it." An uncle with a beard couldn't help but interject. "Sister, listen to me, this old thing is evil. The buddy who bought it last time disappeared." Their eyes were full of pity and fear, as if they were looking at a fool who was about to fall off a cliff. Lin Yuyan felt secretly happy in her heart. This kind of stimulation of suppressing the desire before exalting it is so satisfying. She tossed out 300 yuan, grabbed the game console and left, ignoring the widened eyes and gasps behind her. "Superstitious," she murmured to herself as she walked, and excitedly sent a WeChat message to her best friend Luo Li. "Lily, I found a treasure. A super old game console. Let's try it tonight. Come to my house to watch the live broadcast." Returning to the small loft apartment she rented, she couldn't wait to unpack it. When the game console is connected to the computer, the USB interface fits perfectly. When the screen lights up, it emits a low hum, like the distant mountain wind. The picture slowly unfolded. A remote mountain village with countless torches swaying under the night, and the villagers formed a circle holding torches, and cheers echoed. The player controls a girl to shuttle through the gaps in the firelight, avoiding the things hidden in the shadows' dark silhouettes, stretching out her claws and letting out wet whispers. The game begins. Lin Yuyan bit her lip and typed quickly on the keyboard. The light of the torch licked the edge of the screen, and the hot orange-red seemed to burn through the monitor. She controlled the girl to run, and the villager's singing voice came from the earphones. It was rough and strange. Torches burn evil spirits, and blood stains the mountain roads to seal eternal disaster. Suddenly, a shadow jumped out from behind the torch, and its claws grazed the girl's shoulders. The screen shook and blood spattered. Lin Yuyan's heartbeat accelerated. Beads of sweat rolled down her forehead, and the air in the room seemed to become thicker, mixed with a faint smell of smoke. "Damn, this game is too realistic," she muttered to herself and continued to sprint. There were more and more shadows crawling out from the gaps in the torches, twisted limbs like melted candles, eyes like two pulsating green fires, whispers like the chirping of insects drilling into her head. "Come, join us." She died more than a dozen times, and the torches around her seemed to come alive, swaying more wildly, and the heat wave hit her face, making her really smell the smell of burnt wood. Luo Li's video call came in, and her best friend's eyes widened in the screen. "Yin, why are you looking so pale? That game looks so obvious, delete it immediately." "No, it's so exciting." Lin Yuyan gasped and laughed, but she didn't notice that the old man's warning had wrapped around her like a shadow. Finally, at the last level, she controlled the girl to rush into the village square, surrounded by torches in a huge formation, and the Shadow Evil Spirit King appeared in full form, a huge monster, with the faces of the rotten villagers exposed in the light of the torches, roaring and rushing towards her. Lin Yuyan's fingers were flying, and the girl jumped up and pierced the last torch into the core of the evil spirit. The screen flickers, game over. But not a victory screen. On the screen, blood-red characters slowly appeared. The seal has been broken, welcome to the world. The buzzing stopped suddenly, and the room fell into dead silence. Lin Yuyan was stunned and rubbed her eyes. Loophole! Luo Li screamed on the other end of the phone. What the hell? Smash it! But Lin Yuyan just shrugged, turned off the phone and went to bed, still recalling the rush of adrenaline in her heart. It's just an urban legend, go to sleep. It's late at night.
Dreams come flooding in.
She opened her eyes and was already in a mountain village. Torches were swaying all around, and the heat wave was mixed with the burning aroma of rosin. The villagers' faces were distorted in the firelight, and their eyes were as empty as black holes. Welcome back. Whispers came from all directions. She looked down and saw that she was wearing the clothes of a girl in the game, and her bare feet were stepping on the muddy mountain road, which was freezing to the bone. Outside the circle of torches, shadows squirmed and evil spirits crawled out. Not pixels but flesh and blood, skin cracked and oozing pus, claws scraping the ground with a harsh scraping sound. This is a dream. Lin Yuyan murmured, eerily calm. She wasn't the kind of girl to scream and run away. Her curiosity kept her moving forward. The villagers turned their heads and stared at her with wide eyes. Some people trembled. She is that player. The seal is broken. An old woman knelt down, her voice trembling like chaff. The evil spirit is coming. The torch can't protect it. Fear spread like a virus, their faces twisted into despair, and they scurried away holding their heads. The evil spirits pounced, and the first one brushed against her arm. The putrid smell hit her nostrils, and the claw marks were burning and painful. She gritted her teeth and dodged, picking up a roadside torch. The flames licked her palms, hot but real. Get away! She waved the torch, and the evil spirits retreated and screamed. The surrounding villagers stared wide-eyed and murmured, She is driving them away.
Impossible.
A young villager backed away tremblingly, his voice trembling. Is this girl a savior? No, she summoned them. The pursuit became more and more crazy. Evil spirits swarmed, and their outlines were clear under the torchlight, a mixture of rotting corpses and black mist, with green flames spitting out of their mouths and a heart-wrenching whisper. Souls, give us. Lin Yuyan ran, her lungs seemed to be filled with fire, and sweat mixed with blood fell down. The mountain road was rugged and she slipped. The evil spirit's claws barely scraped her back and tore her clothes. The cold touch felt like dead fingers. She got up, but the torch was almost extinguished. In a moment of despair, she shouted, This is just a fucking game. The flames miraculously exploded, and the evil spirits dispersed. The villagers were stunned and knelt down and kowtowed. Goddess! She is the daughter of the torch. But before the dream collapsed, the last evil spirit king approached. Its huge body blocked the firelight. Its rotten face looked like an old man's, grinning. See you in this world. Lin Yuyan woke up suddenly, feeling severe pain in her chest, and there were shallow claw marks on her arms, oozing blood. She gasped and sat up. The room was dark, and the computer screen automatically turned on. The game console was turned on. It was no longer a mountain village scene but her real room. The camera panned slowly from the bedside table to the door, as clear as a monitor. Luo Li's missed calls kept flashing. She called back with trembling hands, and her best friend's voice was filled with tears. Yanan, what did you scream on the phone just now? I think your face is as white as a ghost. It's okay. It's just a dream. Lin Yuyan forced a smile, but she heard the faint crackling sound of the swaying torch from outside the door. Heat seeped in through the cracks in the door, and the smell of smoke hit your nostrils. The doorknob is turning slowly. The click sound of the doorknob turning was particularly harsh in the dead night, like bone knuckles tapping against the heart. Lin Yuyan's breath caught in her throat, her sweaty palms clenching the phone, her eyes fixed on the slowly rotating brass handle. Heat seeped in through the cracks in the door, mixed with the pungent smell of burnt rosin, as if the entire forest was burning outside. Luo Li's voice burst out from the receiver, as sharp as broken glass. Yan, what's the noise outside the door? Don't move, I'll take a taxi over now. The first night passed like this, and Lin Yuyan forced herself to turn off the light and go to sleep. But on the second night, the nightmares came flooding back. She fell into the mountain village again. The torch circle tightened tighter and tighter, the orange-red flames licked the night sky, and the heat wave blistered her skin. Evil spirits emerged from the shadows, this time no longer sporadic but in groups. Black mist enveloped rotting limbs, and their claws scraped through the soil, making a sticky squeaking sound. The air was filled with the stench of feces, urine, pus, and blood. The villagers were scurrying around. A middle-aged man's bloodshot eyes widened, and his voice shook like a candle in the wind. Player, you broke the seal. They are coming for your soul. He fell to his knees, smashed the bloody mark on his forehead, and murmured, The torch can't protect us. We're finished. Lin Yuyan ran away barefoot. The soles of her feet were muddy and freezing. The torch burned in her palms, and the flame spread across Lao Gao. She waved it, and the evil spirit retreated and screamed like thousands of wronged souls. But more evil spirits came, and a huge one threw her down. Its rotten mouth aimed at her neck, and its green flame tongue licked the side of her neck, burning like sulfuric acid. She yelled to break free, and the flames exploded, forcing it back. The surrounding villagers were dumbfounded. A girl villager covered her mouth and backed away, her eyes widening. She is fighting back. Impossible. Who is this girl? Fear mixed with a hint of fanaticism, they began to follow her, holding up torches to form a defense line, but collapsed when the evil spirit king approached. The monster's face was vaguely that of the old king, grinning and whispering, The door is open. No. It's okay. Lin Yuyan forced out her voice, but heard the doorknob stop, then snap back to its original position. The heat wave receded and the room became cold again. She collapsed on the bed. The claw marks on her arms were burning and throbbing, and blood seeped out, staining the sleeves of her pajamas red. The game console screen was still on, and the camera slowly panned across the door, as if mocking her panic. Luo Li gasped on the other end, her voice trembling. You lied. You just made my heart break when you screamed. I'll come early tomorrow morning and smash that damn thing. The third night was the scariest. In the dream, the torches have burned into a sea of fire, and the mountain village has turned into a purgatory. The screams of the villagers echoed, and the skin blistered and peeled off in the heat wave. An old man who looked exactly like an old king crawled out of the fire. His body was charred, his eyes were green and blazing. Player, you have awakened us to see the world. The evil spirits were like a tide. Their claws tore her clothes, the putrid smell penetrated her nose, and her lungs seemed to be filled with black mist. She picked up the broken torch, but the flame was weak. When the evil spirit approached, she shouted in despair. This is not real. A miracle of flames erupted, sweeping away the area. The villagers behind opened their eyes wide and worshipped with trembling voices. Goddess! She can seal them. Follow. A strong man knelt down and kowtowed with blood and tears flowing. Save us. Restart the seal. But the evil spirit king rushed towards her and swallowed her up. When I woke up, it was already dawn. Lin Yuyan sat up, feeling a tight pain in her chest. There was a shallow burn mark on her neck, which was red, swollen and hot, as if she had been burned by a hot iron. She fumbled to turn on the light. In the mirror, her face was as pale as paper, and her eyes were black and blue. The game console lay quietly on the table. The screen was black, but she smelled a faint smell of smoke. Luo Li's WeChat message bombarded her. You didn't answer last night. Reply quickly. Lin Yuyan replied. I had a nightmare, it's okay. However, she faintly felt that the shadow in the corner of the room was moving. At noon, the attic doorbell rang wildly. Luo Li rushed in first, holding a hammer, and her face was as white as a ghost. Yanan, what's wrong with you? She stared at Lin Yuyan's wounds with wide eyes, her voice trembled, and the hammer in her hand fell to the ground with a bang. Oh my god, these marks are like being burned by fire. Go. That game is evil, now smash it. Chu Tian arrived next. He pushed up his glasses and frowned as he scanned the room. Don't panic yet, let me take a look. He squatted down to inspect the game console, took off the back cover, and put his nose close to the internal chip. There was a faint musty smell in the air, and his brows frowned more and more. It's strange. This machine has no power supply, but it heats up to 60 degrees. These runes on the chip are not standard circuits like self-generated electricity. He touched his fingers, suddenly retracted, and his eyes widened. Hot. Impossible. How can it be so hot without a battery? Luo Li hugged Lin Yuyan and cried in her voice. Chutian, you heard Yin say that she was chased in her dream and was injured when she woke up. This is not science, this is ghost. She stared at the game console. Her legs were so weak that she stepped back and murmured, I dreamed about torches last night. No way. Am I also being tricked? Lin Yuyan bit her lip and looked strangely calm. Lily, just throw it away. But I'll try to delete the game. She connected to the computer and typed in the deletion command. The screen flashed, and the game console suddenly buzzed loudly, and black smoke spewed out from the gap in the fuselage. The smell of smoke filled the room like rotten corpses. Luo Li screamed and retreated, covering her nose and coughing. Ahem! What does it smell like? Like a pile of dead people. Chu Tian's eyes widened and the hand that pushed up his glasses trembled. This smoke smells like organophosphorus. It's not a normal malfunction. In the smoke, the screen of the game console automatically lit up, and blood-red letters appeared. Delete? The door will never close. When she woke up, her whole body was covered with marks. Her arms, neck, and inner thighs had burning claw marks everywhere, dripping with blood and pain like thousands of needles piercing her bones. The room was as hot as a steamer, and there were faint scorch marks on the curtains. She couldn't bear it anymore and called Luo Li and Chu Tian. Come to my house. Now. There is something wrong with this game console. Fear was like a vine and Lin Yuyan's legs were weak, but curiosity forced her to stand firm. Chu Tian, you are an engineer, try it out and see. Maybe there are loopholes. Chu Tian hesitated and Luo Li pulled him. Don't. Throw it away. But he shook his head. Reason overcame panic. I downloaded the simulation version and searched the cracked file from the internet. He connected the laptop and started downloading. The lights in the room flickered on and off, and the air became thicker. The game started and the scene was familiar. In Torch Mountain Village, Chu Tian controlled the character to run, and a whisper came from the headset. Engineer. You are here too. Luo Li squatted on the ground with her knees in her arms, staring at the screen with wide eyes, her voice trembling. Chu Tian, quit. This game is watching you. Lin Yuyan's heart sank to the bottom. She rushed into the bathroom and washed her wounds in the mirror. The water washed away, but I saw that it was not just myself reflected in the mirror. The outline of the mountain village vaguely appeared in the attic behind. The torches swayed and the shadows squirmed. A villager's face was close to the mirror. His eyes widened and his lips moved silently. Come on! She screamed and backed away. Water spilled all over the floor. Luo Li and Chu Tian rushed in. Luo Li glared. What's in the mirror? Yin, your face is so white and transparent. Chu Tian came closer to the mirror, rubbed his eyes and murmured. Hallucination? Impossible, I didn't see anything. But you two saw it. Chu Tian's fingers were flying, and he was about to pass the level. In the last level the evil spirit king appeared, the screen shook and a blood-red prophecy appeared. Chu Tian the seal breaker, his soul returns to the torch. 3 hours later, he will disappear from this world. Luo Li screamed. What the hell prophecy? Chu Tian is about to close. His face turned pale and sweat dripped from his glasses. Is this a random code? Impossible, predicting the future. But he didn't stop and his fingers accelerated. The evil spirit king roared. The screen flashed and he shouted. The level is cleared. The screen froze, the seal has been broken, and the room suddenly changed. Heat waves hit your face, the crackle of torches came from the walls, and black smoke filled the air.
Luo Li du set tawat Chu Tian. Chu Tian.
But his figure was blurry like a melted candle, his eyes widened to the extreme, and his voice whispered wetly. The door opened. In an instant he disappeared, leaving only the burnt mobile phone on the table. The screen shattered, displaying the last message. Torch, see you. The room fell into dead silence, and the smoke dissipated. Luo Li slumped on the ground, staring at the empty place, her voice broken. Choo. This is not true. Lin Yuyan stood stunned. The burning pain from the claw marks intensified, and she smelled the familiar smell of burnt pine resin outside the door again. The doorknob slowly turned again. The click sound of the doorknob was like the tapping of the knuckles of the god of death. Lin Yuyan's heart suddenly shrank. She stared at the brass handle. It rotated slowly, wriggling its rusty joints like a living thing. Heat waves squeezed in through the cracks in the door, mixed with the pungent aroma of burning rosin, and the air was distorted by the heat. Luo Li was still paralyzed on the ground, her eyes wide and wet, and her voice was as broken as glass. Men, there's someone outside the door.
Chu Tian.
Is he back? She got up and clenched the hammer tremblingly, but her legs were so weak that she couldn't stand still, and her knees made a muffled sound when they hit the ground. Lin Yuyan's claw marks were as painful as fire. She gritted her teeth and rushed to the door. Her ears were pressed against the cold wooden board, and she heard the low breathing outside the door, like wet and sticky bubbles squeezed out of rotting lungs.
Bang!
The hand snapped back to its original position, the heat wave dissipated, and the room returned to deathly silence, leaving only the broken light of the burnt phone screen flashing torch. See you. Luo Li screamed and threw herself into Lin Yuyan's arms. Tears mixed with snot wiped her face. Chu Tian is gone. He just melted. We are finished. This haunted house is going to swallow us. Despair filled the air like black mist. Lin Yuyan's vision was blurred. Blood dripped from the wounds, staining the floor red and turning into flowers. She staggered towards Chu Tian's burnt phone. When she picked it up, residual heat came from her fingertips, and the outline of a mountain village vaguely appeared in the cracks on the screen. Luo Li raised her head, her eyes red and swollen. Don't touch it. That thing eats people. But Lin Yuyan had already connected to Chu Tian's laptop. The password was his birthday and the desktop file popped up. A bunch of game console records. Origin from a remote mountain village in Yunnan. It is a taboo item during the Torch Festival. The seller, Lao Wang Tu, is suspected to be a local descendant. Related missing cases. Shin Mo, an urban player 10 years ago, bought the same game console and went to the mountain to investigate, but his whereabouts are still unknown. Online rumors. The game console is not a video game, but a gateway in the village who, clearing the level means soul sacrifice. Luo Li came closer and read with wide eyes. Shun Mo's last message. The torch summons the spirits, stay away. She gasped, her voice trembling like a fallen leaf in the wind. Shin Mo is the same as Chu Tian. This is a curse chain. Yin Yan, we are also being targeted. The night was pouring like ink, the lights in the attic flickered. The wind and rain outside the window were heavy, and the raindrops hit the glass like projectiles. Lin Yuyan was curled up on the bed, her wound wrapped in gauze but bleeding continued. The game console was hidden under the pillow, but it buzzed like a heartbeat. She forced herself to sleep, but fell into a deeper nightmare. A circle of torches burned the sky, evil spirits flooded into the sky, and the rotten stench hit her nostrils. She waved the torch to fight back, and the villagers knelt down to worship the goddess. His glasses were crooked, his face was sallow and twisted, his eyes were green and blazing, and he whispered wetly, Torch Festival Mountain Village. Come and seal the door. Shinamo is waiting for you. He stretched out his claws, rotten fingers dripping with pus, and the air was filled with the stench of feces and urine. Lin Yuyan screamed and backed away, knocking over the bedside lamp, and the cracking sound was deafening. Luo Li rushed over from the sofa, stared at Chu Tian's phantom, and knelt down with weak legs. Chu Tian, how did you become a ghost? Your face is rotten. The phantom turned its head, locked its green eyes on Luo Li, and cracked its mouth to the base of its ears. 3 hours. Disappear. Follow. It rushed forward, scraping the air with its claws and making a squeaking sound of carrion tearing. Lin Yuyan's heart beat like a drum, and a dream torch flashed across her face in despair. She grabbed the game console under her pillow, and the screen automatically lit up blood red. Restart the seal? She shouted. Get out. She slammed the power button with her finger, and the body of the machine burst into orange-red flames, like a torch sweeping across the phantom. Lin Yuyan pushed her away, trying to stay calm, and grabbed the game console with claw-like fingers. The screen was black but as hot as a soldering iron. She growled. Call the police. Hurry.
Luo Li dialat tremblingly.
The sound of police sirens came through the air, but she only received a sneer on the other end of the phone. Miss, if you don't file a missing adult case, you should first look for your home. What do you mean by melting? Are you kidding me? After hanging up, Luo Li smashed her phone, her voice hysterical. They don't believe it. We are like crazy women. Yin, this world is crazy. She squatted on the ground with her head in her arms, her shoulders twitching, and the shadows in the attic stretched, like countless claws touching her back. Boom! The heat wave exploded, the attic window glass shattered, rainwater sprayed in, and the phantom Chuton let out a shrill scream, like the cry of 1,000 wronged souls. The figure twisted and melted into black smoke, and a whisper in the smoke. Mountain Village. Torch. See you. The fire faded, and the game console fell to the ground hot. Luo Li's eyes widened and her mouth opened. O-shaped, her voice trembled to pieces. Yinan, you burned it with a game console. Oh my god, that fire was like a real torch. You drove away Chutian's ghost. How did you do it? She rushed over and hugged Lin Yuyan, worshipping her with tears in her eyes. You are a goddess. Those villagers in the dream said that you can seal away evil spirits. At dawn they packed their bags and rushed out of the attic, stuffing hammers into the trunks, then switched from high-speed trains to buses and drove along bumpy mountain roads for 8 hours. On the way, Lin Yuyan's game console suddenly buzzed, and the screen automatically played. It was no longer a game, but a live broadcast-like scene. At night in a mountain village, torches swayed in circles, villagers danced wildly with bare feet, their faces twisted and fanatical, and evil spirits loomed in the smoke and moved black shadows. A girl villager screamed, scratching her face with her claws, and her flesh and blood were blurred. The players are here. The door is open. The screen zoomed in, a putrid smell seemed to seep from the fuselage, the air conditioning of the bus failed, and a heat wave hit her face. Luo Li stared at the screen, her face turned pale and beads of sweat ran down her forehead. Is this a real live broadcast? Look at the torch, we can smell the smoke. Yin, the evil spirit is waiting for us. The passengers looked sideways, no one dared to approach. The driver glared from the rearview mirror and murmured. What are you doing? It's so hot in the car. At dusk, the bus stopped on the dirt road at the entrance of the village. The fog was thick, and the torch festival had started. The sound of drums in the distance was like a heart, and the rosin smoke was pungent, mixed with the hidden smell of blood. Lin Yuyan got out of the car, her legs weak but her teeth gritted. Luo Li gripped the hammer tightly and scanned the shadows with her eyes. Chutian. Where is he? In the smoke, a twisted figure staggered forward. Chutian. His glasses were shattered, his skin drooped like molten wax, his steps were as mechanical as a puppet, and he murmured, The seal is broken. The soul returns to the torch. Luo Li screamed and rushed forward. Chutian. However, she was held back by Lin Yuyan. The figure turned around, locked green eyes and grinned. Science. Collapsed. Come to sacrifice. Lin Yuyan gasped, her palms blistered due to burns, but she felt a trace of calmness in her heart. She stared at the game console, and a map appeared on the screen. In a mountain village in Yunnan, the Torch Festival mark flashed climax in 3 days. Luo Li wiped her tears, gritted her teeth and stood up. Calling the police is useless, science is useless. Let's go up the mountain and find the ghost village. Chutian showed the way. I will accompany you. Lin Yuyan nodded, and the pain turned into determination. Let's go. Boom. The game machine exploded with orange flames, like a torch flying 3 feet into the sky. Heat waves swept out, the soil at the entrance of the village exploded, and the smoke evaporated hissingly. Twisted Chutian shrieked and retreated. Its figure half melted into the black smoke, its green eyes widened with fear. Player? Goddess? Can't seal it. It staggered and fled into the fog, leaving behind scorched footprints. Luo Li was dumbfounded. She knelt down and touched the remaining warmth of the flames. Her voice was trembling and fervent. Damn it! You did it again. The fire exploded, and Chutian's ghost was burned away by you. The villagers looked over. They are staring at you. In the distance from the torch circle, More than a dozen villagers turned their heads, their eyes bloodshot, and a strong man murmured, "The foreign goddess fought back." Luo Li's eyes widened, and the hammer hit the ground with a clang, and her voice broke. "No, Chutian, you are not him. Your eyes, green fire. Where is the scientific explanation? The heat wave, the smoke are all hallucinations? No, this is real." She stepped back, her legs shaking like a sieve, and looked at Lin Yuyan with adoration. "Yin, save him! Just like last night." Lin Yuyan's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. The wound hurt again, more shadows squirmed in the smoke, and the drums of the villagers approached. But she calmly took a deep breath, grabbed the game console. The screen was connected to the village fire, and the words "blood sacrifice resealed" were written in blood. She yelled, "Chutian, get back to your door," and slammed the reset button. Mushue's torch hit the ground with a pop, and the orange flames jumped up half a foot. The heat wave mixed with the burning aroma of pine resin hit her face, burning Lin Yuyan's cheeks and stinging. Her green eye sockets were as deep as bottomless pits. She stared at the buzzing red light of the game console. She opened and closed her wrinkled lips and uttered a hoarse whisper. "Outsiders. The game door has been opened, and evil spirits wake up after smelling blood. When you enter the village, you sacrifice your soul." Black smoke swirled up from the heart of the flame, wrapping around Lin Yuyan like a living snake. There was a faint clammy gasp from her ankles, and the smell of rotting meat penetrated into her nose, making Luo Li retch with a wow sound. The hammer fell to the ground with a thud. Her eyes widened with wetness, and her voice broke. "Yinan, this old woman's cigarette. There is a ghost hand grabbing it. My feet can't move." The fog on the dirt road at the entrance of the village became thicker, and the sound of drums in the distance was approaching like war drums. More than a dozen villagers' silhouettes emerged from the smoke, stepping on the mud with bare feet and splashing muddy water. Their faces were distorted, and their eyes were bloodshot. A strong man came forward waving a torch and shouted in a rough voice, "Goddess? Ah! Just foreign tourists. That kid from Chutian melted the torch last night and became a sacrifice. Are you here to join in the fun? The torch festival does not welcome uninvited guests." He poked the torch and the flames burned the fabric, burning like a needle. More villagers gathered around, whispering like ghosts, crying, "Look at that thing in her hand. A game console? Old Wangto's forbidden item." Shin Mo also took one with him back then, and it disappeared when he went up the mountain. "These two bitches are going to follow in the same footsteps." They pointed and laughed, getting angry, lengthening the swaying shadow like a swarm of claws rushing towards her. Luo Li backed away with weak legs, hugging Lin Yuyan's arm tightly, her eyes trembling with tears. "Yin," they said, "Chu Qianrong, a sacrifice? We are surrounded. This village is crazy, they are all evil spies." Despair was like a quagmire swallowing her feet. The blisters on Lin Yuyan's palms burst and blood dripped out of the game console. She gritted her teeth and took a deep breath of the rancid air. She whispered calmly, "Pretend to be a tourist. Ask Chu Tian." She forced a smile and stepped forward, her voice steady. "Uncle, we heard that the Torch Festival is lively and we came from the city to play. Last night I saw a buddy wearing glasses, surnamed Chu. Do you know where he is?" The strong man was stunned, and the torch flame flickered. His face turned red and the villagers snickered even louder. "Tourists? What are you pretending to be?" When Chu Tian melted the torch, he screamed, "Science is useless, and you two set off flames at the entrance of the village to drive him away last night, pretending not to recognize him." Mu Shue's green eyes flashed, and the torch waved, and the black smoke dispersed. She said hoarsely, "Enter the village, but don't touch the forbidden area." She turned around and staggered to lead the way, and the villagers gave way to a bloody mud path, her eyes like knives slicing their backs. There are no street lights when entering the village, and there are many torches on both sides. The flickering flames reflect the busyness of the villagers. Women tie pine branches, children apply blood charms, the air is bloody and pungent with rosin, and the dong-dong of drums shakes the chest. Luo Li gripped the hammer tightly, her bangs wet with sweat stuck to her forehead, and whispered tremblingly, "Yin, this preparation is like a slaughterhouse. They look at us as hungry as wolves." A girl villager rubbed shoulders, stared at the game console with blood-filled eyes and screamed, "The players are coming." The door is about to open. She clawed at her cheek with blood streaks across it, and staggered into the shadows. Lin Yuyan's heart sank, the heat of the game console penetrated her palms, and the screen flashed blood sacrifice resealed? Mu Shui led him to the earthen house in the village and pushed open the creaking wooden door. The candlelight inside the house was dim and the corners were filled with dead branches and blood talismans. She closed the door, her green eyes locked on Lin Yuyan, and her voice was as low as grinding stone. The game machine is a taboo in the village. It comes from the evil spirit king of the torch, and the old Wang Tu is a descendant. He sneaked out of this door and sold the city for blood and food. He once sealed the evil spirit in the virtual world and passed the level. That is, the soul is sacrificed, the door to the present world is opened, and the evil spirits are intertwined. Luo Li gasped, hit the table with a hammer and murmured with wide eyes. Old Wang the seller? The descendant of Chu Tian's notebook. Yin Yin, this old woman knows something. Cut. What is the blood sacrifice? How do we seal it? Mu Shui stretched out her withered claws, grabbed a blackened torch core, and breathed out a rancid smell. The blood sacrifice. The player's soul entered the torch array and sealed the evil spirit king again. But you are too late. 3 days later, the undead in the village have emerged. Chu Tian and Shen Mo have become puppets, leading the way to sacrifice. Her green eyes flashed, and she opened the door and whispered, "Go to the ancestral hall to see the truth about Shen Mo. Don't believe in phantoms." After that, she fled into the night fog, and the remaining flames of the torch stretched her figure like a ghost. Lin Yuyan and Luo Li were sneaking around at night. There were a lot of torches on the village road, and the villagers danced wildly to warm up. They stepped on the drums with their bare feet like thunder, and the smell of sweat and blood hit their nostrils. The ancestral hall is hidden at the end of the village. The stone steps are covered with moss. 2 torches burn forever in front of the door, and green will-o-wisps loom in the heart of the flame. The door creaked, and it was bitingly cold inside. The air was moldy and rotten like grave soil. The walls were covered with yellowed old photos, villagers kneeling and worshipping the torch circle, with a photo of a young man in the center, Shen Mo, wearing urban glasses and a stiff smile. Lao Wang in the back row smiled sinisterly with his head hunched over. Luo Li came closer, her fluorescent phone illuminated her pale face, and her voice shook like a leaf. "Yin Yin, this is Shen Mo, who disappeared 10 years ago." He took a photo with Lao Wang too, a descendant of the village? Chu Tian message said that he bought a game console and went to the mountain to investigate. Now I understand, he is a mole. She clicked on the photo with trembling fingers, and the wall dust fell and a faint whisper echoed. "The torch summons the spirit. Don't come close." Lin Yuyan's palms burned with pain, and the game console buzzed in response, and the screen broadcast the real scene of the ancestral hall. Black and white turned to blood red. Shen Mo returns to his place, the source is forbidden. Late at night, the village drums stopped, leaving only the crackling of torches and bloody smoke in the wind. Lin Yuyan was curled up on the earthen bed, her wounds oozing blood and staining her quilt, and the pillow of her game console was as hot as her heart. She forced herself to close her eyes, but the nightmare dragged her into the abyss. Sleepwalking involuntarily, walking barefoot on the icy mud road, at the edge of the forbidden area outside the village, black mist swallowing the sky, torches forming a huge talisman array, 10 feet in diameter, the blood pool of flames boiling, countless rotten arms stretched out to grab the air, and the stench was like burning feces and piss. In the center of the talisman array, the phantom of the old king grinned. "Goddess, here comes the blood sacrifice." Her heart beat loudly, her footsteps approached, and the invisible force pulled her, and the claw marks returned as painful as gouging out flesh. "Yin Yin!" Luo Li screamed and rushed out of the earthen house. She swung the hammer in the air and, "Who?" She pounced on the sleepwalking Lin Yuyan and dragged her back by the collar. In the fog in the forbidden area, there was a loud squeaking sound of carrion tearing. Invisible claws were clawing out, Luo Li's arm was tearing, and the flesh and blood were blurred, and 3 deep marks spurted blood. The pain made her kneel in the mud and scream. "Something is grabbing me. Cold rotten claws. Yin, wake up." Lin Yuyan woke up with a start, drenched in cold sweat, staring at Luo Li's wound. The reality was bloody, bones were looming, and blood dripping from the mud was emitting sizzling smoke. Luo Li folded her arms and trembled with tears in her eyes. You sleepwalk to the forbidden area. That talisman array is alive. The torch is beating like a heart. You are fine, but this injury is real. Are you a talisman? The villagers said that the goddess is right. The peak of despair returns, the fog in the village becomes thicker. The torch flames turn green, and the whispers of hidden spirits are everywhere. Lin Yuyan gritted her teeth and covered Luo Li's wound. The game console exploded with heat, and the words flashed in blood on the screen. The source is near. Forbidden. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared in the direction of the ancestral Hall Shinamo. His glasses were shattered, half of the wax on his face was melted, his green eyes were locked, his steps were as mechanical as a puppet, and his lips were open and closed. I lead the way. Chu Tian is in front, and Old Wang's head is behind. Enter the forbidden area, find the source, and seal the whole picture. He stretched out his rotten claws and pointed at the black fog outside the village. Luo Li's eyes widened with fear, and he hit the ground with the hammer halfway up. His voice was intermittent. Ghost Shinamo is alive. He invited us? This is a trap. But he knows everything. The villagers' shadows moved in the distance, torches surrounded them, and the roar of the strong man was faintly heard. The goddess is forbidden? Blood sacrifice begins. Lin Yuyan's heart was as strong as iron. She calmly held the game console tightly. Blood dripped from her palm into the seam of the machine. The screen buzzed and brightened red. Restart the blood sacrifice? The evil spirits in the fog whispered like a tide, and she roared. Tell me, where is the source? Shinamo grinned ghostly, his green eyes stared, and the rotten smell hit his face. Follow me. The door of virtuality and reality will open, and the king of the undead will descend in 3 days. He turned around to melt the fog, and the flame heart of the torch talisman formation cracked a black hole, and the heat wave and blood were like the door of hell opening. Luo Li tugged on Lin Yuyan's sleeves and trembled in admiration. Yin, you are not afraid. Even ghosts listen to you. But my legs are weak. In this forbidden place you can't come back. The village drums roared, countless torches swayed closer. An unknown fear swallowed everything like a black tide. The black mist puffed up like a living thing, and half of Shun Mo's wax-melted face twisted into a ghostly smile under the flames. He turned around mechanically, pointing his rotten claws forward, and the gulu in the black hole's flame heart boiled with blood bubbles. The heat wave mixed with rust and blood hit her nose, and Lin Yuyan's hair curled up. The dong-dong of the village drum shook the ground like a heartbeat, and the shadows of villagers standing around with torches were moving. Their red eyes were bulging, and the roar of the strong man echoed. The goddess is banned? The blood sacrifice is open. Outsiders offer their souls. The flame tail of the torch swept over, and the heat and pain were like a whip on the back. Luo Li's legs were weak and she knelt in the mud, and the hammer hit the ground. Her eyes trembled with tears, and she pulled Lin Yuyan's sleeve tightly. The voice shattered like glass. Yan, this black hole is sucking. My wounds are burning, and there is something crawling in my bones. Don't follow the ghosts, we are dead. The villagers snickered like wolves, pointing to the scorched corners of their clothes. Ha! Tourists pretending to be goddesses? Chu Tian also broke in like this last night, crying for father and mother when melting the torch. Follow in his footsteps. The blood-dropping game console in Lin Yuyan's palm evaporated, and the blood-red pulsation on the screen synchronized with the black hole. She took a deep breath of the rancid mist and whispered calmly, Follow. Ask for the source. She pulled up Luo Li with her iron fist, ignoring the cold scratching feeling wrapped in black smoke around her ankle, and forced her way into the black hole. Luo Li's wet eyes widened and she screamed in admiration. Yinan, are you crazy? It's biting your foot. But you don't feel pain. The villagers gasped, and the strong man shook off the sparks from his torch and murmured tremblingly. The goddess really broke into the forbidden area? Open the door? It's gone. Shinmo's green eyes flashed and his mouth opened and closed. Follow me. Chu Tian is ahead. His figure melted into the fog and the black hole swallowed the three of them. The world was spinning, and the wind roared in his ears mixed with countless whispers. Blood sacrifice, return. The ruins of the Forbidden Land suddenly appeared in front of us. The ruins of ancient bricks were covered with blood vines. Under the moonlight, the torch talisman array expanded like the bloody mouth of a giant beast. The 20-foot diameter flaming blood pool rolled. The rotten arms popped against the water and expanded and contracted. The stench was like feces and urine burning and boring into the nose. The game console buzzed loudly, and the live broadcast on the screen overlapped reality. Virtual evil spirits roamed the ruins, gray-white ghost faces appeared. Mouths opened and screamed silently, perfectly synchronized with the swaying black shadows in the physical firelight. Lin Yuyan stepped on the broken bricks, and the heat wave on her handheld device was like her heartbeat. She roared. Shenemo, where is the source? Where is the old king's head? Shenemo stopped, his wax face cracked and green juice dripped, and the mechanical finger pointed at the ruins of the collapsed ancestral hall in front of him. Near the Shusher Gate. The wound on Luo Li's arm reopened, blood splattered in the mud. She folded her arms and backed away, her voice trembling like sieve chaff. Yin, look at those villagers. They are coming after them. Their eyes are empty like dead people. Sure enough, more than a dozen villagers staggered in from the edge of the ruins, holding torches high, eyes as dull as wax figures, lips parted, and chanting the ancient mantra repeatedly. Torches call for spirits, blood is sacrificed to the evil king. The souls of the dead return to their places, and they will be immortal. The mantra sounded. It was as low as the underground crawling, shaking the ground slightly. Luo Li's iron hammer was raised and fell down, and he stared in fear. They are no longer human. They laughed at us just now, and now they are like machines. Yin, this curse is pulling on my soul. Deep in the ruins, a human figure loomed under the broken wall. The beam of Luo Li's mobile phone swept across it. She screamed and rushed forward. Chu Tian! Oh my God, it's Chu Tian's body. The body was curled up in the bloody mud. His glasses were broken, the engineer's shirt was burnt and melted with wax. The torch rune brand on his chest was pulsing, and the rotten arms of the blood pool seemed to be caressing his back. Luo Li burst into tears and knelt down, grabbing the corpse arm with her claws and shaking it. Chu Tian! Wake up! Aren't you melted? We're here to save you. Lin Yuyan's heart sank. The game console screen flashed puppets road ahead. She said coldly. Don't touch. He's dead. Before she finished speaking, Chu Tian's corpse cracked bones, his wax face slowly raised, his rational eyes turned green in ghostly fire. His lips split open and he whispered wetly. Science is useless. Blood sacrifice. Science is useless. He bounced up like a living corpse, his rotten claws clawed at Luo Li's throat, and his nails dug into the flesh and spurted blood. Luo Li screamed and leaned back, swinging the hammer randomly and hitting his shoulder with bang. But the sound of bone shattering was ineffective. Chu Tian's green eyes widened and he roared like a wild beast. Sacrifice your soul. Lin Yuyan's reaction was like lightning. The game console hit Chu Tian's forehead with a boom, and the screen flashed with blood and synchronized with reality. Chu Tian's body stiffened, his green eyes flashed and he took 3 steps back. His waxy face twisted and murmured. Goddess, bloodline? Luo Li covered the blood hole in her neck. Her eyes widened in shock, tears and blood flowed in admiration and screamed wildly. Yin, he will stop as soon as you hit him. The game console is a weapon. Chu Tian. Does he recognize you? No, his green eyes are still bright like Shenemo. The villagers chanted more intensely, gathered around the torches, and the flames turned green. The phantom evil spirit crawled out of the screen, and the gray claws clawed at the air. Creaking, and the sound of tearing rotten flesh could be heard everywhere. Shenemo mechanically turned his head and locked his green eyes on Lin Yuyan. Old Wang's head, behind the source. He pointed to the deepest black dome of the ruins, and the phantom of the old Wang's head appeared in the boiling blood pool. The hunchback smiled enlarged and said, Goddess, the blood sacrifice is coming. The virtual and the real are unified. The king surrenders. The phantom's claws stretched out, and the real wind and bloody heat hit her face. Luo Li climbed up with weak legs and hugged Lin Yuyan tightly. Run! They are all crazy. Chu Tian moved again. Yin, what you did just now was so amazing. I thought we were finished. A melee broke out to escape. Chu Tian's living corpse rushed towards him. His rotten arms were waving with bloody wind. The villagers chanted dully and pushed around with torches. and the black hole in the flame heart of the talisman formation expanded and swallowed bricks and tiles. Boom. Lin Yuyan dragged Luo Li and ran into the ruins. Black smoke bit into her ankles like dog teeth, and the game console was as hot as a soldering iron. She gritted her teeth and roared. Shenmo, stop! This is a trap! Shenmo's figure flashed in front of the road, blocking the road, and grinned. There is no way. Wang Xing. Luo Li hit the villager's head with the hammer and pop! Plasma splashed on her face. She screamed in fear and turned to fanaticism. Yin, believe you. Smash the machine. Try it. Lin Yuyan's hand dripped blood again, and the screen buzzed brightly to broadcast live to the whole audience. The bloodlight was like a laser sweeping away the shadow of evil spirits, and those gray ghost faces evaporated. In reality, the villagers chanted intermittently, and their eyes flashed in confusion. The strong man took a step back with his torch on the ground and muttered, Goddess, machine light? Chu Tian's living corpse staggered, and the green fire whispered dimly, It can't be sealed. At the peak of despair, the black dome at the end of the ruins cracked open. Countless rotten arms sprang out from the pool of blood and clawed at the sky, and the stench was like a pile of burning corpses choking your throat. Luo Li gasped and folded her arms, her wounds and flesh squirming like living insects. She trembled. Yin, we are trapped. Chu Tian behind, Shenmo in front, villagers blocking the road. Your machine saved us. There are more evil spirits. Lin Yuyan, cold sweat ran down my forehead. The game console suddenly trembled, and the screen flashed real mode on forcibly. The blood-red interface expanded like a projection. The panoramic view of the ruins overlapped with reality. The outline of the torch evil spirit gradually condensed, and the gray body was semi-transparent to reality. Suddenly, Mu Shue's green-eyed figure emerged from the fog. She waved a charred torch with her withered claws. The black smoke spread like a whip and her rotten arms popped. The green flames burst out and temporarily sealed the black hole. The heat wave mixed with the burnt aroma of pine resin suppressed the blood. She roared hoarsely, Outsiders! Back away! The dull eyes of the villagers flashed green and disappeared. Chu Tian's living corpse knelt and squirmed, and Shenmo's figure melted into the mist and whispered, Mush, stop the king? Mu Shuelu sunk his eyes into Lin Yuyan's eyes, and his wrinkled lips opened and closed. Evil spirits have invaded reality. The game door is fully open. There is no way out. Escape. 3 days before the climax, the undead in the village emerged, and your souls have been marked. She poked the game console with a torch, and the black smoke wrapped around her to relieve the heat wave. Luo Li's eyes widened in admiration and she murmured, The old woman saved us? But she said there was no way. Yin, what is your machine's present mode? The evil spirit is going to take form. Lin Yuyan's heart felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. The game console was buzzing and pulsing, and the screen was filled with red words. Real-world mode. Virtual spirits unite. Thousands of torches are lit at night during the Torch Festival, and the king descends. Mu Shue turned around and staggered, her green eyes flashing warning. Go back to the earthen house in the village and don't sleepwalk again. The blood sacrifice requires the initiative of the goddess. But the king has woken up. Chutian Shenmo is just an outpost. Her figure rushed into the shadow of the ruins, and the flames of the torches stretched like claws. Luo Li dragged Lin Yuyan and ran out of the confinement. Behind the black fog, the villagers chanted again, chasing after them with dumb eyes. Goddess! Present! Chutian's living corpse shouted science is useless from a distance, and Shenmo's whisper echoed. See you behind the scenes of the old king. The torches on the village road swayed closer, the drums thundered, and the air was bloody green. Luo Li hugged Lin Yuyan's arms tightly with tears in her eyes. Yin, you smashed the machine and shed blood. Even Mushua was shocked. The ghost puppets retreated, and the villagers were afraid. You are a true goddess. But the mode of the world. Tonight is the Torch Festival. Thousands of torches are lit, and the evil spirits are materialized. What should we do? The door of the earthen house slammed shut. The dim yellow flickering of the candle reflected their blood-stained faces. Lin Yuyan gasped for breath and wrapped around Luo Li's new injury. The game console was throbbing with heat on the bed, and the screen broadcast live outside the village. There were many torches in preparation. The villagers tied pine branches and applied blood charms in a daze, and ancient mantras were chanted like a tide. Luo Li curled up and trembled, adoringly whispering, Yin, I bought a machine from the city and came here. You always saved me calmly. Chu Tian turned into a ghost, but you didn't cry? Mu Shui said there was no way. I believe you have a way. Lin Yuyan's palms burned with pain, and the sheets were stained with blood. She stared deeply at the screen, and the old king in the phantom of the blood pool with a hunchback and a sinister smile enlarged. See you in this world, goddess. The wind blew outside the window, the torches crackled to warm up, and the unknown fear surged into the heart of the village like a black tide. Thousands of torches were waiting to be lit, and the night of the unity of ethereal spirits came quietly. The candle flames crackled in the earthen house, and wax tears slid down the mud wall like tears of blood, reflecting on Lin Yuyan's pale face. The blood scabs on her palms were cracked, and the sticky heat and pain were like ant bites. The black smoke around her ankles was squirming faintly, like a living thing digging under the skin. Luo Li curled up in the corner of the bed. The bloody hole in her neck was wrapped with dirty cloth and was oozing red. The rotten flesh of her arms rolled up, and her worm-like blood streaks twitched. She clenched the hammer across her knees, her knuckles turned white and trembled. She looked up at Lin Yuyan with tearful eyes, and her voice broke like a broken leaf in the wind. Yen. Chu Tian's ghostly appearance, with his green eyes like lanterns, broke my heart when he yelled, "Science is useless." You smashed the game console, and he took 3 steps back, and then he murmured, "Bloodline of the goddess?" Podu stabbed the machine to save us. You said, "This machine is your amulet?" But with the word Wangjiang written on the screen, thousands of torches are burning tonight. How can we hide from it? She crawled closer and grabbed Lin Yuyan's sleeves, her eyes glistening with admiration. The smell of blood and earth filled his nose. From buying this crap at the flea market in the city, to escaping in the forbidden area, you are always calm and dripping blood and scanning ghosts with lasers. My legs are so soft that they are turning to mud, but you pull me away with your iron fist. You are a goddess, I believe it. Lin Yuyan ignored the cold scratching on her ankles and took a deep breath of the musty smell in the house. She placed the game console on the Kong and dripped blood from her palms into the cracks. The sound of evaporation resounded loudly. The blood-red pulsation on the screen was like a beating heart. The projection expanded and covered the earthen wall. There were many torches outside the village. The villagers tied pine branches inertly and applied blood charms. The drums sounded as low as the heartbeat of the earth. She touched the screen with her fingers, the interface trembled, and the hidden menu slowly appeared. Advanced Living Mode. Blood Sacrifice Restart/Hidden Level Unlocked. Luo Li's eyes widened with tears, and the hammer fell to the ground. She rushed forward and the tip of her nose was almost touching the screen. She screamed in a trembling voice. Yan, new menu? Hidden level? Is this an upgrade? Just now in the forbidden area, you dripped blood, laser-steamed ghosts, hit Chu Tian and retreated, and now it's unlocked. Oh my god, the blood in your palm is like a key. The villagers are looking at us, from laughing at tourist sacrifice to fearing goddess machine light. Mu Shui's green eyes are locked on you. This machine recognizes you as my master. She burst into tears and hugged Lin Yuyan's arms enthusiastically. Her sense of smell was overwhelmed by the heat and blood fragrance emanating from the game machine. My wound has stopped burning a little, and the insect movement has slowed down. Is your machine protecting us? Lin Yuyan frowned and clicked into the hidden level. Blood mist rolled on the screen, recreating the virtual scene of the ruins of the Forbidden Land. A blood pool with a rotten arm slapping the water, a great evil spirit appeared, and the game control appeared, Torch Vortex Destruction/Talisman Array Reversal. She pressed the fuselage with her palms, heat waves like lava flowing through the veins, and the black smoke on her ankles squeaked away a few inches. She took stock and whispered, "Smash the puppets away." Blood droplets and laser sweeps the shadows, and the real-world projection broadcasts the whole scene. This level may be able to reverse the torch summoning. Luo Li gasped. The cloth on her neck was wet and hot. She knelt down and rubbed her hands, trembling in worship. Reverse summons? Yin, you can unlock it after 2 minutes of research. I thought we would waiting for death. The torches outside the window are warming up and the drums are approaching. The eyes of the Waxman villagers are as hollow as dead fish. They just chased us and yelled, "Goddess sacrifice." And now they are tied with blood symbols like sacrifices. You are so calm and inhumane. Outside the house, the wind is blowing, the flames of the torches are sweeping the window paper, and the heat and pain are like needles pricking the skin. The villagers' movements in the game console's projection are accelerated. Their eyes are bulging, and their lips are moving in unison to repeat torches to summon spirits. The brief silence was like a rope strangling Luo Li's neck. Lin Yuyan wrapped Luo Li's new injury, tore a piece of cloth and pressed the blood hole in her neck. There was a pop sound to stop the bleeding. Luo Li hissed in pain but laughed, her eyes flashing with ecstasy. Yin Yan's hand is as steady as iron and the bleeding has stopped. Your body is beating like a living thing, and the old Wang Tu phantom on the screen is still smiling, see you in this world. But you don't panic. I panic. When Chu Tian's living corpse rushed to me, his nails penetrated my flesh and spurted blood. I thought it was over, so you smashed it to save me. He grabbed the hammer and made gestures, simulating laser scanning, and his voice was an octave high. The strong villager shakes off the sparks from his torch, muttering, the goddess broke into the forbidden area. And Mu Shui's green eyes locked on you while pumping the rotten arm, saying the blood sacrifice requires the goddess to take the initiative. Yin, your bloodline is the key? Let's finish repairing and break out to reverse. Lin Yuyan nodded, the game console buzzed, and the frequency was increased. The hidden level was loaded to 50%, and the rotten arm retracted in the phantom of the blood pool to preview the vortex. She deeply smelled the blood that was getting thicker in the air. Green mist seeped into the cracks of the window, black smoke bit at her ankles, and she muttered in a suppressed voice. Wait until the climax breaks out, then move again. Luo Li curled up tightly, hugged her chest and whispered in admiration. It's up to you, goddess. The candlelight lengthened their shadows, and the room was temporarily peaceful like the eye of a storm. Thousands of torches were waiting to be lit, and an unknown black tide surged quietly. Suddenly, the drum in the heart of the village boomed, like the hearts of all animals beating in unison. Earth rustled down from the walls of the earthen houses, the game machine projection trembled, and the full-screen blood-red live broadcast. Thousands of torches were lit in unison, and the flame-tailed greenery spun into a giant whirlpool, engulfing the village square with a diameter of 50 feet. The collective of citizens moved wildly. The strong men with red eyes waved pine branches and roared like wolves. The women and children twisted their waists and tossed their hair in a dull manner. The blood charms burned ZZ and exploded into green flames. The ancient mantra, torch summons the spirit and blood is sacrificed to the evil king, turned into a frenzy and roared, and the heat wave filled the window with the smell of burning corpses and feces like a tsunami. Luo Li screamed and threw herself at the window. Yan, it's climax. They danced wildly in the whirlpool. The green flame sucked the ground, and the hands in the earth stretched out to grab their ankles. The projections were synchronized, and a group of gray-white evil spirits crawled out of the whirlpool. Their huge bodies were half-transparent into reality. They shrieked without mouths and ripped the air, and claws grabbed the air and pop, and the rotten flesh fell. Lin Yuyan's handheld machine was hot, and the hidden level was loaded to 100%. She calmly controlled the virtual torch and inserted it into the blood pool. The buzzed laser blasted out of the window from the body, and the green flames evaporated and dispersed after hitting the edge of the vortex. Luo Li's eyes widened in fear and turned into a frenzy, and she smashed the window paper with a hammer. Yin Yan's laser fires again. The villagers danced close to the whirlpool, stepping on the dirt hands to pull them down. Is your chance against you? Footsteps clicked outside the door, and Chu Tian's living corpse was enlarged in the projection. His chest talisman pulsed green and exploded, and his wax face turned completely evil. The green fire eyes melted into black holes, the rotten arms stretched 3 feet, and blood boiled in his chest. Luo Li screamed and retreated. Her neck wound reopened and blood spurted out. She grabbed the edge of the bed with her claws and trembled and screamed, Chu Tian! He is completely ghost. The black hole sucks my soul, and the rotten arm smells like a shit pit. Yin Yan, he recognizes your blood and he attacks you. Lin Yuyan raised the machine with her iron fist and smashed it against the crack of the door. Boom, blood flashed. Chu Tian stiffened and took 2 steps back, and murmured wetly with his wax mouth. Feng! No, Wang is near. In the projection, Mu Shui's skinny figure rushed into the whirlpool. She waved a charred torch and her green eyes roared. Foam water! Outsider, catch it! A gourd of talisman water flew to the roof, Luo Li jumped up with the hammer to catch it, and splashed the shadow of the little evil spirit's claws with a pop, and those gray ghost hands emitted white smoke and evaporated, and the rotten smell weakened. Luo Li turned her head in ecstasy with tears in her eyes. Yinan, Mushua talisman has become a water god. The ghost-throwing hand melted, and my arm bug stopped. Her green eyes look at you like a savior. The three of them joined forces for the first time. Mushua projected a withered claw to draw a talisman. The torch poked the edge of the vortex and the green flame was temporarily sealed. Lin Yuyan chased the phantom with a laser. Luo Li splashed the talisman water to repel him and crawled out of the earth claw. The villagers danced like crazy and slowed down a little. The strong man's eyes flashed in confusion and murmured, "Machine light? Talisman water?" But Shun Mo's waxy face suddenly appeared in the projection. Yep, his green eyes flashed mechanically, and his rotten mouth grinned sinisterly. Mukshuizu is useless, Wang Xing. His figure melted into the vortex and pointed in the direction of the collapsed temple. Countless evil spirits materialized and surrounded the forbidden area. Gray-white bodies sprang out from the earth with the sound of bones. The sea of claws submerged the ruins, and the blood pool boiled and swallowed the torch.
Muksua roared hoarsely, Shen Montag.
The puppet is exposed, leading to the king's tide. Her torch broke, and the green flames backfired with the withered arm and burned it with a pop. She staggered and knelt in the blood mud, and locked the green eyes on Lin Yuyan's projection. "Goddess? The blood sacrifice requires the player's soul. Your source." Before the words were finished, the bottom rotten arm swooped out, and glue wrapped around her waist and dragged her into the earth. She screamed and pointed to the sky. Old Wang's head. The virtual and real door. The earth wave rolled up, and Mu Shue's figure disappeared. The villagers danced like crazy again and shouted blood sacrifice to the evil king. The swirling green flames expanded and swallowed the village road, and the heat wave burned the roof tiles rumbling. Lin Yuyan's heart sank into the ice cave, the game console buzzed and trembled wildly, and the hidden level was forced to enter the ending. The phantom of the old king's head in the blood pool enlarged, and the black hole mouth opened and closed. "See you in this world. The goddess has come to sacrifice blood." She gritted her teeth and dripped blood from her palms into the machine, and turned a huge laser beam into the heart of the vortex. Boom! The green flames evaporated in a radius of 10 feet, and the real and virtual overlapped and broke. The evil spirits squeaked and retreated under the ground. The villagers fell to the ground in a daze with clear eyes but confused words. "Torches, dream." They got up and rubbed their eyes. The torches fell to the ground and were extinguished. The vortex disintegrated and disappeared, leaving only the stench of blood and mud in the village square. Luo Li sat paralyzed and the hammer rolled to the ground. She stared in shock and wet her eyes. She burst into tears and yelled, "Yang, you have passed the level." The huge laser beam, the whirlpool shattered. The villagers woke up, with amnesia and rubbing their eyes as if they had just woken up. Mu Shue shouted player soul before dragging away. "Shinemo, the exposure caused the tide, but you reversed it. God." When they looked at the projection, they went from roaring madly to being afraid of the goddess machine light talisman water. And now they are all dumbfounded. Chutian's living corpse stood frozen in the distance on the village road. And the green fire whispered it can't be sealed, and turned around to melt the fog. The wind outside the house stopped, the drum beat stopped, and the embers of the torch popped to cool down, but the glue whispered underground again, and the blood words scrolled on the screen of the game console. The king has not yet awakened and the soul mark is deep. 3 days of undead tide, the virtual and real doors are open. Thick green mist between the windows, black smoke biting at the ankles. Lin, the blood hole in Yuyan's palm expanded, and Luo Li hugged her knees in fear and trembled. Yen, the villagers woke up and lost their memory. Kumushua was screaming underground. Shunemo is still there. Chu Tian is not dead. The king is close, our soul marks, what should we do? The unknown black tide surged again, and the earthen house trembled like the heartbeat of a grave. The embers of the candle in the earthen house exploded with a pop, turning into black ash dots and scattering on the edge of the bed. The blood holes in Lin Yuyan's palms were ticking red, and the sticky heat snaked along the fingers. The blood words, the king's awakening is not over, on the game console flickered slowly like a pulse, reflecting the gloomy blue and white on her face. Luo Li hugged her knees and curled up into a ball. The cloth on her neck was soaked with blood and spread. The worm-like bloodshot threads on the edges of the rotten flesh on her arms were crawling and squeaking. The aftereffects of the talisman gradually dissipated, and the smell of rust, blood, and moldy soil filled her nostrils. She raised her head with tears in her eyes, and her voice cracked like the remains of silk in the wind. Yin. The whirlpool shattered, and the villagers woke up, but the Gulu underground was like 1,000 insects gnawing bones. Mu Shui was dragged away and screamed, "Old Wang's head is empty and real door." Shun Mo's waxy face smiled sinisterly and pointed at the collapse of the temple. "Our soul marks are deep, and there is a wave of undead in 3 days. How can we survive? Chutian's melting fog is not dead, and the black hole is staring at our souls. My legs are so weak. I can't stand up." Her claws clawed at Lin Yuyan's trousers, her nails dug into the fabric, and fear surged in her admiring eyes. "Your huge laser beam was so powerful that the villagers roared madly and rubbed their eyes and lost their memory. They all stood in the bloody mud and muttered, 'Torch dream.' When they looked at the projection, their eyes went from red to goddess machine light. But now it's dead silence outside the house, and the green mist in the wind is so thick that it makes me panic." Lin Yuyan ignored the biting cold pain of the black smoke on her ankle. She took a deep breath and the smell of corpses gradually became thicker. She helped Luo Li stand up with an iron fist, and tore off her cuffs to wrap up her neck. The sound of puff was heard as she squeezed the blood. Luo Li hissed in pain but clung to her with moist eyes. Flash frenzy. Yin Yan's hands are as steady as iron, and the bleeding has stopped a little. "Your machine is trembling like a talisman, but the screen has the words 3 days tied written in blood on it. The shadow of Chutian is flickering in the distance on the village road, and the green fire is dim and whispers cannot be sealed." "Are we waiting to die?" Lin Yuyan whispered. Mu Shui pulled forward and shouted, "You are the source of the player's soul." Shen Mo exposed the tide and pointed to the collapse of the temple, and the underground altar hid the source. "Follow the clues to dig out the roots." She pressed the game console with her palm. The heat wave rushed through her veins, and the buzz projection restarted, and the blood mud in the village square was broadcast live. The villagers needed it. Eyes crawling up, the embers of the torch were stamped out with a pop, and he looked around dully and murmured, "Dream? Why are the torches bleeding?" The strong men shook off the pine branches from their shoulders, and the women and children shook their hair and dirty faces. Their eyes were blank like zombies waking up, but no one came close to the earthen house, and distant shadows ran into the foggy alley. Luo Li's eyes widened with fear, and the smell of blood and mud filled her nose. "Yin, they woke up like zombies. They didn't chase us and yelled, 'Goddess presents,' because they were afraid that the light from the projector would disappear." "What do you think of Mushua's underground life?" Shun Mo's waxy face melted into a vortex, and his green-eyed machine stared at us. The door creaked and cracked. The night wind blew green mist in the face like ghost claws, and the village road outside the earthen house was slippery with blood and mud and collapsed. Lin Yuyan and Luo Li walked quickly, and the hot-jumping projection navigation in the palm of the game console. The cracks in the ground in the direction of the collapsed temple pulsated with red light. The black smoke on her ankles bites her flesh, and she endures the cold and fire. Her chest trembles with the iron hammer of Luo Li, and her neck wound oozes blood and stains her clothes. Yin, the footsteps in the fog are tacking, like Chu Tian's rotten arms dragging the ground. The shadows of the villagers flash in the alley, staring at us blankly, and the lips move tourist machine light. From mocking soul offering to the present they were cowering in fear. "Your projection live broadcast them woke up. It's a miracle." The village square was dead, only the blood pit Galu was bubbling. The ashes of the torches exuded the smell of burnt corpses. Strong men rubbed their temples and muttered, "Whirlpool green flames, nightmare." Women and children hugged their knees and howled. No one dared to pick up the torch, and the air was as oppressive as the lid of a tomb. Lin Yuyan smelled the smell of rust and putrefaction in the green mist and frowned deeply. "Shun Mo's clues are under the ruins of the temple. Hurry." Luo Li panted and nodded frantically, shouting in admiration. "I listened to you, goddess." They watched your machine projection, from dancing like crazy with red eyes to retreating in fear of amnesia. The whole village was shocked by your blood laser. The ruins of the collapsing temple are hidden in the mist. The ruins of the ruined walls are covered with dirt. The waves of earth on the edge of the blood pool have left traces. The claw marks of gray-white evil spirits are deep in the mud and green bubbles are popping up. Lin Yuyan fired with her handheld machine. ZZ laser pierced the mist to open up the road a few inches. The black smoke retreated from her ankles temporarily. She jumped into the crack. Boom! The underground stairs were tilted and slippery. The moss and rotten leaves squeaked to pieces. Luo Li hammered her heels, and the scream echoed. Yanin! The ground! The bottom ladder is as black as ink. The wind roars like a rumble in the intestines. Mushua screams here. The phantom of the old king's head appears in the world. My heart beats loudly. The projection synchronized the live broadcast of the altar's outline. The outline of the altar was pulsing, and the afterimage of the rotten arm was splashing in the water. They slipped 10 feet and landed on the ground with blood and mud splashing on their knees. The altar was revealed. A circular grotto as hot and humid as a corpse's intestines, with torches and talismans carved on the walls stained with blood, and a cracked stone platform in the middle. A prototype of a game console stood. An antique wooden shell with a hollow torch totem. The screen was broken but blood mist rolled, and the gray and white bone beads inside were connected to wires that hummed like the heartbeat of an evil spirit. The smell of rotting corpses in the air was so thick that Luo Li covered her nose and retched. Her eyes widened in fear and she was shocked. Yanin! This... The ancestor of the game console? A village antique with torches engraved with talismans, and bone beads beating like a living heart. Mushue said, the source of your machine, so it turns out that this thing calls the evil spirit king? The villagers don't know. The fleas in the city sold you this cursed door. Oh my god, your handheld console resonates with the heat, and your shadow flashes in the fog on the screen. Lin Yuyan approached the prototype. Blood dripped from her palms, and the sound of evaporation resounded through the grotto. The two machines pulsed blood red simultaneously, and the projection expanded to fill the wall. The hallucination of the former player's corpse pile came over. A mountain of gray and white corpses stacked on the waist, a distorted wax face with bulging green eyes, a rotten chest and arms that stretched and contracted gulu to catch the air, bone beads embedded in the blood hole in the palm, and lips moved in unison to silently, player's soul. Her eyebrows hurt, and in the hallucination, Shun Mo's wax-faced leader smiled sinisterly, pointing at her and muttering, it's the turn of the goddess's blood chakra. The black smoke around her ankles creaked into her bones, and her clothes were soaked in cold sweat. Luo Li rushed forward and smashed the air with a hammer. Yan, a pile of corpses. Those former players, their green eyes are staring at your soul, and the smell of rotten arms is in the nose. I saw Shinemo leading the dance with a waxy face. The projection broadcast live broadcast of their deaths, from being addicted to games to blood sacrifices in the mountain of corpses. You stand firm, don't shake, the prototype of the calm dripping blood resonance. My legs are so weak that I kneel in the mud. Luo Li crawled to the side of the stone platform in tears, scratched the moss wall with her claws, dug out the broken pages of the bloody ancient book, and spread out the bloody ink record. The torch was dipped in the blood of the sacrifice to reseal the evil spirit king. The player must sacrifice part of his soul to ignite the fire vortex. Otherwise the virtual and real gate will forever open to the undead tide. She shrieked with a trembling voice, eyes flashing with admiration. Yin Yen. Blood sacrifice method. A torch soaked in blood to become king. But you have to sacrifice your souls. Mushua's green eyes locked and you shouted, player soul. So this is it. The prototype bone bead absorbs souls. You recognize your bloodline. The goddess takes the initiative to offer it. The villagers sacrifice the blood talisman green flame just for this. You can sacrifice your soul, how can you live? The grotto suddenly trembled with a boom. The underground grunt exploded into a low roar, and the wax-faced entity of Shinemo appeared in the blood mist on the prototype screen. His green-eyed mechanical deity flashed, and his rotten mouth grinned with a wet and sticky laugh that echoed like a bone scraper. Huh? Goddess bestie, Mushua was dragged deep into the bone, and her bones were broken. Your chess pieces have been marked. The game machine is banned from the village, and the blood sacrifice cycle of the king is welcomed. The new round is yours. His half-transparent figure stretched out his rotten arms to grab the air. The green chest talisman pulsed. The grotto wall talisman formation reversed the bloodlight, and the green flames jumped up to seal the road. Luo Li screamed and retreated. The hammer hit him and sparks flew. The rotten stench hit his face. She clawed at Lin Yuyan and trembled wildly with her arms. Shinemo ghost appears. He is mocking our chess pieces. He smells like a black hole 3 feet away from his rotten arm. His green eyes locked on you and smiled sinisterly. The shadows of the villagers flashed in the projection. He caused the tide to expose him. Now he is blocking the altar. Yin, where is your laser? Lin Yuyan raised the machine with an iron fist, and the blood drop laser buzzed at Shunmoing, evaporating him back an inch. His wax face twisted and backed away from the wall, muttering, "It's useless." Wang Su. Luo Li's eyes widened in shock and turned into ecstasy. The laser fired again. He retreated, his wax face melted, and his green eyes flashed in fear of the goddess machine. But the grotto is sealed, and Gulu is approaching. Green mist exploded from the crack deep in the altar. The evil spirit king roared like thousands of corpses chanting Boom Gulu. The phantom of the old king's head enlarged with a hunchback. The black hole opened and closed its mouth to swallow all the light. The blood pool boiled and the sea of rotten arms sprang out with the sound of Kara bones, and the shadow of claws flooded the stone platform. The steps on the exit stair were clicking, and Chutian's puppet led the crowd to block the way. His black holes melted and dripped with pus, and his rotten arms dragged 3 strong wax men. The villagers' eyes turned red and their eyes exploded, shouting, "Goddess sacrifices her soul." The remaining branches of the torch blocked the road with green flames, and a tsunami of heat and corpse stench came. Luo Li sat paralyzed in the bloody mud. The hammer rolled down. She held her head in fear and screamed, "Yin!" Wang roars to wake up. Chu Tian led the wax villagers to block the exit. Black hole eyes sucked souls. Rotten arms grabbed, scientific uselessness. Shinemo laughed slyly at the chess pieces. We in a desperate situation. The soul mark bites the heart. And the 3-day tide is advanced? Lin Yuyan's mobile phone is crazy, the prototype resonance is bloody, but the sea of green flames is approaching. The grotto is oppressive like an abyss of eternal calamity, and the unknown black tide swallows everything. Deep in the grotto there was a roar like thousands of insects eating at the heart. Gulu gulu blood pools boiling and green mist rolled up. Rotten arms sprang out like waves. Each broken bone clicked to break and reorganize. Claw tips dripped with pus and hit the stone platform with a splat, and the stench was like a cesspool exploding into the nose. On the exit stairs, the black holes in Chutian melted and dripped with yellow pus, sizzling steam, and the rotten arms dragged the 3 wax-strong wax man. The villagers' red eyes rekindled, and they muttered in a daze, "Goddess, sacrifice your soul." The green flames hurrahed their branches high, and the tsunami of heat and rotting corpses rushed in, sealing off the stairway with only an inch of gap left. Shunmo's waxy face was half-transparent and floating in the air. The green-eyed mechanical deity flashed like a malfunctioning heartbeat, and his wet mouth grinned with a scratchy smile. "Ha blood reincarnation. The goddess's machine light is useless. Wang Su is the unity of virtuality and reality. Your soul mark is deep, give it up." Luo Li sat slumped in the bloody mud. The hammer rolled off her fingertips, the worms on her neck squeaked again, and the blood stains spread on her collar. She held her head and screamed, shattering into pieces of glass. Yin and Chu Tian's black eyes are staring at Hunter, and his rotten arms smell like rotten intestines. Fishing for soup, the wax villagers roared with green flames to block the road. Shinemo Ghost laughed at the chess piece. "Our souls are biting, and the 3-day tide is now exploding. My legs are so weak that I feel like a grave is weighing on my chest. How can I fight back?" Her eyes bulged with fear, the claws are clawing at the bloody mud. The nails are broken and the blood is stretched. The despair in the eyes of worship is like ink. You use the laser to fight him off, but the sea of king's claws comes in, and the prototype bone beads buzz and suck your blood. We are dead, and the goddess can't save us. The blood hole in Lin Yuyan's palm was ticking red with heat. The heat wave of the game machine was flowing through her veins like a fire snake biting bones, and black smoke penetrated her ankle with threads of cold pain. The center of her eyebrows was like 1,000 needles. Her mind flashed to the pile of corpses of players who all laughed. It's their turn. Questions filled the air like poisonous fog. Is this grotto real? Or is the game virtually pulling my soul? The sound of melting pus dripping from Chutian's black hole is like the melting edge of reality. The old king's black hole mouth swallows light, and the phantom overlaps with the blood word Wong awakens on the game screen. The door between reality and reality has been opened. Is my bloodline goddess a curse? She suppressed her trembling with an iron fist, took a deep breath of the air that was so thick with the smell of rotting corpses, and whispered calmly like a blade. The blood sacrifice method in ancient books. The torch is soaked in blood to induce a whirlpool, and the player sacrifices his soul to reseal it. Luo Li, pick up the remaining branches of the torch, carve blood symbols on the wall of the talisman array, and block the tide. The game in her heart is like a storm. Soul sacrifice? Or trapped forever? Mu Shui's green eyes shouted, player's soul is your source. The prototype recognizes my blood. The resonance burns the heart sacrifice part. How much is part? If reality is unreal, how to escape? But never kneel, lower down and then play. Luo Li burst into tears and got up, her legs shaking like chaff from fear. Her claws scattered the remaining branches of the torch and snapped. Ashes sprinkled with blood and mud. The green mist in her breath choked her lungs and coughed up bloodshot eyes. Her eyes widened in horror and turned frantic. Yin, you have an iron brain. Remember the blood sacrifice method? The torch talisman formation blocks the tide. A magical machine. Wisdom. She pounced on the moss on the corner of the wall, and smashed open the broken pages of the blood-yellow ancient book with her hammer. The torch talisman on the edge of the page was stained with blood. She bit her fingertips and poof, blood spurted out from the branch. She pressed the talisman on the wall with trembling hands. Zizi, the green flames reversed a few inches. The grotto wall pulsed with blood like a slow heartbeat. She screamed and roared, murmuring in admiration. The talisman array is bright. The torch branches are soaked in blood and buzzing. The green claw sea retreats half a foot, and the fingers of the rotten arm are cut off. The villager's wax roar is weak, and Chutian's black hole eyes flash with fear of the goddess talisman. Yin, you calmly plan, my legs are still weak, but my heart is boiling with blood. When they looked at Fu Guang, they went from red and red to rubbing their eyes and retreating. It was like your miracle had reappeared. Luo Li is protecting the law with an iron hammer across his chest. His clothes are soaked with blood and sweat. The worm threads around his neck have stopped squirming for a while. The heat wave of the talisman formation has opened up the green fog of the sea of claws. The depression of the grotto has eased slightly, and the rotten stench has become a little thinner. Lin Yuyan took advantage of the opportunity to push closer to the prototype. The game console sucked energy like a vacuum pump pulling souls. The blood hole in her palm expanded and glue bubbled. The black halo at the edge of her vision expanded. The wires on the sniffing bone beads buzzed, and her heart beat sweetly. The peak of the psychological game. Is this heat the starting point for sacrifice? Or is the king eating my source? Chu Tian shouted. Science is useless. The black hole I locks, reality is like a game, my boyfriend died early, and the soul mark is as deep as an iron chain. She roared in pain, blood droplets hit the prototype screen and steamed, the blood mist exploded, and the two machines simultaneously projected and expanded the wall. The evil spirit king appeared in the virtual and real form. The old king's head, a hunchback, a giant shadow superimposed on the game pixel ghost, a semi-physical black hole with a mouth swallowing torchlight, the veins of bone beads under the gray-white rotten skin beating like a network of thousands of souls, countless. Bulging wax-faced Shinemo clones with green eyes. The sea of rotten arms in the chest slapped the blood pool, and the roar boom galoo shook the grotto to collapse. Her feet were a little soft and she forced herself to remain calm. The whole picture of the king. The hub of the virtual and real gate, the bone bead soul network. Luo Li looked at the projection from a distance, covered her mouth and retched, then stared in ecstasy and fear. Yinan, the machine sucks your essence and makes your face white. But the projection is so accurate. Wang, the image of the unified camel is superimposed. The black hole mouth swallows the light and the green-eyed Shinemo clone. The sea of rotten arms is like a mountain of living zombies. The villagers look at the projection, and the king's true body retreats from the roar to the stunned state. Shunmo's wax face twisted and floated closer. The green-eyed machine flashed faster. His rotten arm stretched out to grab the air and left traces of pus. His sticky smile scratched his bones and echoed, I am the bridge. Forever trapped in virtuality. The source of players, the machine sells the city to summon reincarnation. Wang Su, your donation of blood is useless, tied swallowing the village. In the projection, his wax-faced clones laughed together, revealing it like a knife piercing the heart. Lin Yuyan's laser buzzed again, and his shadow melted and retreated from the wall. Smoke evaporated and he murmured in fear. Goddess, machine light. Luo Li smashed the repairs with a hammer. Sparks flew and rancid, and her nose exploded. She shouted in admiration. Ghost Shinemo, surrender. The Yongshu Bridge is exposed, and his green eyes are afraid of you. Laser, he retreated from the wall and melted. The wax face cracked. Goddess machine. Yin, your handheld machine is white hot. Absorb the essence and change the projection of the king's true body. The situation is about to turn around. The talisman array torch held the sea of blood. The green mist retreated a few feet. The situation changed slightly, and the rotten air in the grotto turned to burnt blood. Lin Yuyan was exhausted, soaked in cold sweat. Her vision blurred, and her psychological fear surged. Is reality real? The black smoke on the ankles bites the bones and hurts like waking up from a dream. The black hole in Chutian's eyes melts with pus and drips down the stairs. The wind roars outside the village road and the green flame seals the sky. If it were fake, my soul would have been sacrificed long ago. If it was real, the blood sacrifice would change the seal, and Luo Li and Chutian would be doomed forever. She gritted her teeth and whispered, "Escape! Follow the depths of the projection crack, and there may be a way out where Mushue's broken bones are." Luo Li quickly retreated from the prototype with her iron fist, and the game console jumped to navigate the red veins in the crack beside the blood pool. They jumped into the boom and slid down, blood and mud splashing on their bodies. Pop! The rotten arm claws scraped Luo Li's arm and scratched the flesh, and the insect silk burst out with a squeak sound. Luo Li screamed in pain and ran wildly, smashing the claw shadow with the hammer. Yin, the claw hit my arm. The smell of rotten meat rose to the sky, but after being blocked by the talisman formation, the claw sea chased after me. The end of the village road collapsed with a boom. The torch smoke filled the sky with green flames like a ghost screen, and the live broadcast of the villagers' wax collapsed and rubbed their eyes. Goddess, escape. You are resourceful and save your life. Exit battle broke out. Chutian the rotten arm smashed the ladder with a bang. The waxy man threw a torch with green flames. Hula Lin Yuyan used a laser to sweep the road, and the pus steamed and cracked. They squeezed out of the creaking grotto. The night wind rolled up the fire and covered the village with smoke like an iron mesh. The village road was destroyed into a blood pit and an abyss. The villagers in the square in the distance screamed and knelt down. The dream of the torch is broken, the goddess is bloody. On the way to escape, Lin Yuyan's mind wavered, and she had a wave of doubts. Is this smoke sealing the sky real fog? Or is wangsusure.com pulling me back into the game? Luo Li's arm was wounded and blood flowed. Tick. The protruding clawed shadow clicked from the smoke, pierced into the rotten flesh of her shoulder. Poof. The hallucination exploded. The evil spirit king came to the physical form of the hunchback shadow. The black hole mouth opened and closed to swallow her face. The green-eyed Shanmo's clones laughed offer, and the sea of rotten arms and legs glue devoured the bones. She screamed and fell to the ground. The hammer fell from her hand and rolled into the pit, her eyes bulging with fear. Yin, the king is here. The black hole swallows my soul, and the sea of claws buries me alive. Reality is shattered. Lin Yuyan rushed to protect her, blood and smoke bursting into the air with excitement, but the shadow of her claws was deeply embedded in Luo Li's shoulder. The green mist was as thick as the abyss of eternal calamity. The unknown black tide surged again, and the village fireworks sealed the sky endlessly. The night wind was like thousands of ghosts roaring together, rolling up the fire and turning the smoke column into an iron net of green flames. At the edge of the blood pit at the end of the village road, Luo Li's shoulder claws were deeply embedded in the rotten flesh, and black pus spurted out. Worms burst and squeaked into her blood vessels. Her face was twisted into a wax shell, and her eyes were bulging. She appeared like a boiled fish bubble, and the evil ghost king's hunchback entity was reflected in the dead gray eyes. The black hole mouth opened and closed galoo, to swallow half of her cheek. The waves of the rotten arms slapped the legs and bitten the bones. The stench was like the juice of the intestines of 10,000 corpses bursting straight into the nasal cavity, choking and burning the lungs like swallowing sulfuric acid. Luo Li screamed and shattered into blood foam. Yeah, the king is here. The black hole sucks my soul, and the sea of claws buries my leg bones and cracks. Reality is over, the game can't be won. Her hammer rolled down to the bottom of the pit and smashed into the bloody mud, her claws clawing at her shoulder flesh. The fingernails were broken and bloodlines were drawn, and the fearful trembling sound was like a muffled roar under the grave. I saw Shenmo's green-eyed clone laughing in the black hole, and Chu Tian's black hole melted and dripped pus on my face. Our soul mark is deep, and we will be doomed forever, and even the blood of the goddess cannot save us. Lin Yuyan threw herself to protect her, the blood hole glue, in the palm of her hand bubbled up red and expanded like a rotten hole. The prototype wooden shell torch totem of the game console was as hot as molten iron. The wires strung with bone beads buzzed and sucked in her essence, the black smoke in her ankles gnawed at her marrow, and the cold pain shot up her spine straight to her forehead, and the edge of her vision was blackened and swallowed up half of the sky. She smelled the stench of Luo Li's shoulder pus mixed with the green mist and the stench of rotting corpses. It was so thick that tears and nosebleeds flowed from her eyes, and a dark tide surged in her heart. Is this Wang Huan really coming? Or is it the virtual and real door that pulls my soul back into the game? Chu Tian's rotten arm came out from behind the smoke and smashed the edge of the pit with a pop, and the waxman's green firework hurla cast a heat wave to roast his skin. The villagers' red eyes burned again and they shouted, "Sacrifice your soul to become a goddess." In the distance, kneeling figures turned and rushed towards the square, their footsteps thumping, shaking the ground like a tide of corpses. Shenmo's waxy face appeared half-transparent in the sky above the pit, the green-eyed mechanical deity flashed and accelerated, and he smiled with a wet mouth. "Huh? The goddess's machine light is powerless, the king is here to bite my friend. Your bloodline is the deepest mark of reincarnation. Sacrifice it. Sacrifice it, the core of the altar is waiting for you." The afterimage of the projection spreads through the wall, the shadow of the king's camel overlaps with the pixel ghost. The black hole mouth swallows the light and the green-eyed Shenmo clone opens. The sea of rotten arms hits the blood pool boom galoo, causing the abyss to collapse, and the dust mixed with blood mist explodes like a tomb. Despair overwhelmed her. Lin Yuyan's knees gave way and she knelt down in the bloody mud. Mushua's green eyes flashed before her broken bones and she muttered, "The source of the player's soul, the torch is soaked in blood and the vortex is resealed. The game machine originates from the village taboo, and the virtual torch bites the real thing. But the heat wave of the handheld machine gnaws at the bones, the energy is exhausted. The cold sweat soaks the clothes, Luo Li's shoulder claws are deeply dug into the bones. The black hole phantom swallows her earlobe. The sound of melting flesh can be heard, and Chu Tian's black hole eyes lock soul, dripping yellow pus plop. Smashing her shoulder, the villagers roared and clawed at the air, leaving traces of pus. The goddess is here. Tide swallows the village. Shenmafu stretched out his arms and grabbed her hair and pulled her. The ridicule reverberated like thousands of needles pricking her heart. "I am the bridge, Yongshu player source. The machine sales city calls Wang Su. Your laser talisman array only extends." When Luo Li heard this, her eyes turned to death with fear and despair, and she trembled and murmured, "Yin, they are surrounded. The sea of claws is gushing from the bottom of the pit, and the king's black hole swallows half of my face to numbness. Your machine buzzes and burns your hands, your face is as white as paper. We are dead. And the goddess is also broken." The green flames of the village smoke sealed the sky like a curtain of eternal calamity, and the unknown fear flooded her heart like a black tide. Lin Yuyan bit her lip with iron teeth and spurted blood. She forced her knees to weaken and stood firm. She flashed the blade in her calm eyes. "No sacrifice. Activate the backlash." She stabbed the blood hole in her palm and entered the machine groove. Pfft, the hot-blooded bush shell torch totem. The wires strung with bone beads buzzed and flashed red like a beating heart. The prototype of the game console trembled and kala, cracked and sprayed a virtual torch beam, and it went straight into the night sky to tear the green flame iron net in zealous steam smoke. The image explodes. The virtual sea of torches materializes from the projection on the machine screen. The orange-red flames whoosh and jump into the abyss. The rotten arm sea pops and burns into black charcoal. The fishy stench turns to the aroma of burnt meat, and the claw shadow shrinks and squeaks with the sound of broken bones and shatters into ashes. The phantom of the king's claw on Luo Li's shoulder evaporated with a boom, and the black hole mouth swallowed the soul and split open the green mist. She gasped, her adoring eyes widened and turned wildly. and she screamed with a trembling voice. Yin Yin, the machine is backlash. The virtual torch burned the sea of claws physically, and the rotten arms at the bottom of the pit were scorched and broken. Kara. The black hole, the pain in my shoulder is relieved. The villagers looked at the sea of flames and retreated from shouting to rubbing their eyes. The goddess's torch summons. The side effects exploded, the villagers' wax faces froze, their red eyes turned from wildly burning to narrowed pupils, they knelt down and murmured. Torch dreams come back, the goddess bites back the king's tide. The wax man's green fire torch dropped his hand and smashed to the ground to destroy himself. Chu Tian's rotten arm swung in the air and hit the edge of the pit. Boom. The black holes melted into yellow pus, sizzling steam exploded, the roar turned to trembling. Science. Science is wrong, the goddess fire. Shun Mo's face twisted. The song floated high, the green-eyed mechanical deity flashed randomly. The rotten arm grabbed the pus-dripping blood pit, and his wet and sticky smile broke into pieces. Backlash? Useless King Hardcore altar. The virtual sea of torches spread across the village road, burning every inch of the green flame ghost screen. The heat wave filled the sky with the smell of scorched corpses. The afterglow of the talisman array at the exit of the grotto rekindled the blood pulse in the wall. The rotten arm sea temporarily retreated a few feet, and the boiling blood pool at the bottom of the pit slowed down the weak cry of Galu. Lin Yuyan took advantage of the situation and pulled Luo Li's iron fist to jump back. The heat in her vision worsened and she roared. Mushua's talisman! Burn the puppet! Luo Li endured the pain of burning her shoulder and flesh, and dug her claws into the pit to scatter Mushua's broken bones. Where it landed, Ka grabbed the bloody yellow ancient talisman fragment. The torch on the talisman was mottled and pulsing with blood. She gritted her teeth and stabbed the body of the talisman with blood-spraying puff. She held the hammer across her chest and slammed the talisman into the blood pool at the bottom of the pit with clang. The remaining talisman exploded into a whirlpool of orange flames and swallowed the sea of rotten arms. The group of burnt wax men popped, and the melted wax dripped. The corpse smell turned into ashes and floated into the sky. Chu Tian's remains were the first to bear the brunt. The black hole soul-locked soul boom shattered the yellow pus fountain. His rotten arms dragged the ground and knelt in the pit. He roared and wailed. Yuyan! The soul network is broken, science is wrong. The wax skin peeled off and the skeleton collapsed. Luo Li watched Chu Tian burn up, and her tears and blood were mixed. Lu stared in shock and fear turned to ecstasy, and screamed in admiration. Yen! Mushua's talisman burns the puppet. Chu Tian's black hole bursts with pus and kneels to death, and the wax man melts and ashes float. The villagers shouted in the distance. The goddess's talisman burns the king's slave. From kneeling to crawling back, the green flames were all extinguished and opened the way. Your machine fire held up the sea, my talisman swirled around, it was against the sky, and my heart was full of blood. Boom! His eyes flashed at the end, and he murmured your name before being burned to ashes. But when the smoke cleared, an old woman came out, the village witch Mushua, with wrinkled skin like a dead tree and deep-set green eyes. She held a torch to block the road and her voice was as hoarse as a millstone. The game has awakened evil spirits. Don't enter the forbidden area. She waved the torch, black smoke rolled in, and the evil spirits whispered faintly. Lin Yuyan's palms felt hot and painful, the game console kept buzzing, and the sound of village drums approached like thunder. But the release only lasts for an instant, and the king's body regenerates even more crazily. The deep roar of the altar was like the door of hell opening. Boom came to half of the village, the veins of gray-white rotten skin and bone beads exploded, countless green eyes opened, and half of the houses in the village were opened, hot eyes bulging. Yan! The little core is temporarily retreating, but the king is reborn and swallowed half of the village, and the black hole pulled the house's soul into pieces. The core of the altar jumped violently, our bloodline markers buzzed, and the king declared, the end, players sacrifice their souls. The unknown abyss opened again. How to seal it? The green flames in the night sky sealed the sky. The king's roar shook the sky and announced the beginning of the end game. The virtual and real doors were fully opened, and the soul net pulled their hearts like iron hooks, and the fear of eternal calamity surged endlessly. The night wind tore into thousands of ghost claws. A tsunami of green flames hulong hit the end of the village road. The edge of the blood pit abyss collapsed like 10,000 bones shattered, kara kara. The blood stains on the stone steps of the altar square pulsated like a heart. The evil ghost king camel shadow half the village expanded, and the gray-white rotten skin bulged out like a network of bone beads like living insects squirming and squeaking. Countless green-eyed shadows blinked and flickered with mechanical cold light. The black hole opened and closed its mouth with a gurgling sound and swallowed up half of the cottage. The wooden beams melted and pulled into nothingness. The soul screamed like a needle piercing the membrane, and the fishy and putrid waves filled with ashes hit the nose and burned directly into the lungs. The villagers' waxy faces rekindled and their red eyes ran wildly. They stepped on the bloody mud and scratched the air with their claws, leaving traces of pus. Wang Quan Quan. The goddess sacrifices her soul for the end. The roars piled up into a chorus of hell, causing chest pain and pain. The black smoke from Lin Yuyan's ankles chewed up the marrow and turned into a line of fire. It went straight to her forehead, and her vision was completely black. The edges were devouring like ink spreading, the blood hole glue. In the palm of her hand was blistering red and black, and the rotten flesh was curling up. The prototype wooden shell torch totem of the game console was welding the metacarpal bones like hot molten iron. Her knees gave way and she knelt at the bottom of the pit. The iron hook of the soul net pulled at her heart and buzzed like a bell beating her internal organs. Luo Li's iron arms tightened around her waist, clinging tightly to her shoulders. Her flesh was rotten and her bones were turning outwards, painful as if they were bitten by thousands of ants. Her earlobes were numb and still had the phantom of a black hole. Her eyes were bulging, fear and frenzy intertwined. Tears and blood flowed down her face, and the wax shell dripped down, hitting the blood and mud, and she trembled, shaking and roaring like grave soil. Yanin. Wang Zixing swallowed up half of the village, and the black hole opened the house and the soul crackled into the brain. A tsunami of green flames blocked the entrance of the village, and we had no way to escape. The villagers rushed at us with their claws, and the stinking stench smoked our eyes. The machine heat eats your palms and is covered with blood. The white of her eyes, the soul mark buzzing and pulling her heart like a hook. Wang Lu's eyes locked on your blood, announcing the end. The player sacrifices his soul. How to seal it? The abyss of eternal calamity opens, and we are shattered into ashes. Her hammer hit the edge of the pit and the bloodline broke. Stretching out, the sight of the king's camel shadow roared. Green mist sprayed out from the cracks of the rotten skin like the intestines of thousands of corpses. Unknown fear flooded her heart like a black tide. Her legs went weak and she hit the bloody pit with her knees. Gucci. The villagers approached with a roar. Goddess of sacrifice. The claw shadow rubbed her hair, leaving scorch marks. Despair is like an iron net of green flame sealing the sky. Lin Yuyan bites her lips with iron teeth and blood spurts out all over her mouth. The blade flashes in her calm eyes. She whispers to herself like broken glass. Mushu. The source of the player's soul, the torch soaked in blood and the vortex reseals. The core. But Wang Hei's mouth swallowed the light and expanded. The afterimages of green-eyed Shinemo laughed and scratched their bones. Haha. The goddess's backlash is only delayed. The village mistakenly called me 100 years ago, and the game machine sealed the virtual and real door. This reincarnation is broken. Your blood is the purest. Sacrifice the core of the altar, and you will be a forever player. The veins in the wall of the projected afterimages exploded, and the soul net pulled her. The black smoke in her ankles intensified, and the cold pain shot up her spine like thousands of needles pricking her marrow. When Luo Li heard Wang's words, her eyes turned to death in fear and despair. They were sacrificed. The green flames flooded the village entrance with a boom. The wax villagers surrounded them and roared, and the souls were shaken with heartbreaking click. Even the blood of the goddess couldn't bear it. The tsunami of torches at the entrance of the village in the distance hit the stone wall and shattered. The heat wave burned the skin, and the smell of burning skin hit the nostrils, and there was no way to escape the iron curtain. Lin Yuyan forced her knees to weaken, grabbed Luo Li's waist with her iron fist, jumped over the edge of the pit, and smashed the bloody mud roll. The red veins on the computer screen flickered to navigate the depths of the altar. She roared. Dive into the altar. Luo Li protects the rear. I will sacrifice the machine with blood. The soul fragments will be replaced. Luo Li endured the pain in her shoulders and bones, and fished them out. The iron hammer clicked into the arm, and the iron step guard Lin Yuyan's waist glared at the crowd of wax villagers, roaring like a female beast. Get out! The goddess is crowned king. The wax shells of the remaining villagers on the way staggered out of the shadows, and an old wax woman turned her red eyes white, clawed at the air with pus droplets, and spoke like a ghost. The murmur echoed in the eardrums. 100 years ago, a torch festival carnival, a string of forbidden bone beads was accidentally burned, and the king's camel shadow was summoned to swallow up half of the village. The village shaman used the player's soul machine to seal the virtual and real doors, and the torch soaked in blood and pressed the core. In this reincarnation, the machine sells the city and calls for destruction. Green mist sprayed from the cracks in her wax face, and she knelt down. She dug out her chest and dug out the flesh with a pulsing pulse. She screamed in fear. The giant core of the king's heart core altar. The soul fragments are exchanged for eternal seal. The goddess's bloodline reincarnation key. After saying this, the black hole phantom swallowed half of her body glue, and the soul was pulled into the void with a squeaking sound that pierced her brain. Luo Li's eyes widened in shock, and the hammer hit the wax woman's body and flew away with a clang. She trembled and whispered in admiration. Yinan, the old wax reveals the history. The machine-sealed king needs soul fragments to sacrifice his heart. The sea of green flames at the entrance of the village hit without retreat. We the wax tide chases you and shouts, sacrifice. The smell of pus fills the sky. Your screen flashes with the red words soul fragments for seals, and blood jumps. I protect your waist. My heart is as hot as fire. But the king's green eyes lock on you. The soul net pulls your legs and the black smoke engulfs you. The bloodstone steps in the altar square pulsed like the dong-dong of the hearts of thousands of souls. The green flame tsunami hit the village entrance with a bang, and the rain of gravel hit her shoulders with heat. Lin Yuyan's computer screen projected a blood-red option of sacrifice soul fragments, reseal the heart core. Wooden the shell fire burned the totem's palm hole, expanded the rotten flesh, and the soul mark buzzed at the top and pulled the heart hook to the point of splitting pain. Her knees were weak and she threw herself on the stone steps. Her calm eyes locked the bone beads deep in the altar with a gray and white rotten skin bag, and the afterimage of green eyes Shinemo blinked and laughed. Luo Li's iron hammer crossed his chest to protect the front. His shoulder was rotten and flesh dripped with pus and blood mixed with the stone steps. His fearful and fanatical eyes turned to the iron blood, and the crowd of wax villagers roared, "Get away! Goddess's blood sacrifice, the king is broken." The wax group's red eyes approached the sea of claws. The mouth swallowed half of the torch stand in the square glue. The soul screamed and pierced the membranes with bloodshot drums. Lin Yuyan's field of vision was black and swallowed the sky. The iron teeth bit her tongue and blood spurted out in her mouth, and she stabbed the palm of her hand with a deep blood hole and entered the machine slot. The hot-blooded shrub shell bone beads and wires strung together buzz. A blood-red vortex flashed, and went straight to the core of the altar. Hurrah! The screen exploded. The prototype of the game console trembled and the cracks of Kara Kara spewed out virtual and real orange flames from the torch sea. The flames whispered and rushed to the stone steps of the altar. The giant core vein of the back-eating bone beads squeaked and burned black charcoal. The rotten skin bulged out in gray and white and exploded. Wang's green eyes and the afterimage of Shunemo all opened and turned, blinking and flashing dip randomly, the black hole swallowing the soul and shrinking glue, and making a weak cry. The gray skin of the hunchback peeling off to reveal the skeleton and the Kara collapsed, and the iron hook of the soul net was loosened and the buzzing sound weakened. Luo Li stood guarding Lin Yuyan. Her eyes widened in admiration and she burst into tears of ecstasy. She shrieked with trembling as if she had seen a miracle. Yin, the blood sacrifice machine is here. The soul fragments are exchanged. The torch vortex burns the core of the heart. The afterimages of the green eyes flash randomly. The black hole mouth shrinks and cannot be swallowed. The crowd of wax villagers look at the sea of flames, and the pupils are photographed from the roaring claws. Kneeling down and rubbing her eyes, goddess blood sacrifice to confer the king. The old woman's ashes floated to the sky and said reincarnation seal. The green flames hit the edge of the altar and the smoke evaporated. The blood in your palms was rotten, the face was white, and the soul fragments were throbbing, but this reversal. The king roared and trembled, the bones were broken. Click! The goddess is sealed. The side contrast is perfect. The wax villagers are frozen. Their red eyes are extinguished. They kneel on the bloodstone steps and hit dong dong. Blood mist explodes. They tremble in silence. The torch goddess is a blood sacrifice. The core is burned. The dream is returned 100 years ago. The king is broken. A wax man with a green fire torch took off his hand and destroyed himself with a pop. The rotten arm swung in the air and smashed the edge of the altar. Boom! Green eyes melted into pus. Zizi steam exploded, and he roared and wailed, crawling on his knees. Goddess! I sacrificed my soul by mistake. The king devoured my soul and I regret it. His wax skin peeled off, his bone beads, his veins cut off, Kala, and collapsed into ashes. His green eyes flashed in the gray, and finally he felt human fear and regret. The evil spirit king Camel Shadow, half of the village convulsed, roared and shattered the glass and screamed, creak. The black cracks in the giant core of the core spread crack. Countless ink remnants of the green eyes burst into green mist. Boom. The blood of the projected afterimage wall dimmed intermittently. The black hole mouth swallowed light and collapsed and pulled its own rotten skin glue backlash. The gray-white skeleton was exposed and twisted and twitched. The sea of souls screamed out of the core and evaporated into green smoke. Wang Fu's mouth opened and closed with wetness, and finally he burst into laughter and turned into despair and regret. Bloodline reincarnation sealed. Players regret their origins. Machine backlash will cause eternal disaster. No. The sound was like thousands of broken needles. Bone beads and veins were all scorched and pop rain fell on the altar. The green flame tsunami was completely wiped out Zila, and steamed into scorched blood mist, and the smoke curtain on the village road tore open the night wind, which was cold and biting. Lin Yuyan took advantage of the sea of flames to spread, and the soul fragments throbbed and flashed red in her vision. She pressed forward with iron steps towards the remains of the heart core. The blood droplets of the machine's red vein guide hit the scorched core steaming. The vortex of virtual and real torches blasted Hulong. The giant core Kara completely shattered the green mist and exploded like thousands of souls being liberated. The evil spirit king's remains collapsed and fell into the abyss of the altar. The villagers knelt down and worshipped. Tears and blood flowed from their wax faces. They rubbed their eyes and roared in admiration. They chanted in worship. The goddess blood sacrifice wins the king. The torch will be sealed forever. Village student Luo Li threw her arms and hugged Lin Yuyan. Her shoulders were broken and the pain was relieved, and she was ecstatic and fearful. Her eyes rolled up in worship and burst into tears. Yinan, the king collapsed into the abyss with his heart broken. His green eyes completely wiped out, and the black hole collapsed. The wax crowd went from shouting to kneeling down to worship the goddess. Seal forever. The old wax man regretted his mistake. Your face was bloodshot and your eyes were white with pain. It was heartbreaking. After the dream 100 years ago, the king regretted and said, no. The incense of the burnt bones disappeared. The remaining light of the altar talisman rekindled the blood. The village was half engulfed. The shadow of the house was still, and the green flames in the night sky were dazzling. Emotions are released like a volcano erupting. The abyss of the pit is scorched and the sea is scorched and the tide is receding. The green mist is thinning and turning to the scent of burnt blood. The villagers collapse and rub their eyes and kneel down. After scratching his bones, he laughed. The bridge explodes. The heart core altar, the king's weak point. He suddenly self-destructed. Boom galoo. His wax body cracked and green light spurted out to guide the way. The projection crack pointed to the bone bead giant core deep in the altar in the square. Lin Yuyan's heart felt as if it was being yanked by an iron hook, humming, and gouging out a piece of flesh and blood. The black tide in her vision was like ink pouring straight into her head. The stone steps of the altar at her feet instantly collapsed into an endless abyss whirlpool. Galoo galoo. Deep in the core of the ashes, the afterimage of green eyes flashed with mechanical cold light, locking onto her blood and roaring as wet as the throats of thousands of corpses. Blood chakra reincarnation. The fragments belong to me, and the door to the abyss of eternal calamity is opened. The iron wires of the soul net wrapped around her ankles and black smoke gnawed at the marrow of her legs. Rotted pain was like burning coals jammed into the seams of her bones. Her knees gave way and fell into the cracks. The prototype of the palm game console Kara trembled and sprayed green mist from the cracks in the wooden shell. The orange flame torch dimmed the totem and pulled her soul straight into the abyss of the game. The night wind turned bitterly cold, and the villagers knelt in the tide. Their wax faces stiff, rubbed their eyes and whispered in fear. The goddess fell into the abyss? The king's ashes pulled back the soul net, and it can't be sealed. A wax man's gray skin peeled off and the bone beads squeaked out green pus. His pupils shrank and trembled as he climbed closer to the edge of the abyss. He stared at the whirlpool and growled and then wailed, "No! The goddess's blood sacrificed the victorious king, the village torch sealed forever. How can I regain my bloodline with green eyes? I regret that I mistakenly summoned the goddess of reincarnation 100 years ago." He threw his rotten arm in the air and smashed the stone. Boom! The melted residue of his green eyes evaporated. Zila! He knelt down with tears and blood and exploded with blood and mist. The chorus turned to despair. Wang can regret that the goddess saved us. Luo Li's iron arms clenched tightly around Lin Yuyan's waist, and the rotten flesh and white bones on her shoulders were turned outwards and hurt like thousands of ants. Her eyes bulged out in ecstasy, turning to death and fear of heat. Tears and blood dripped down her wax shell face into the abyss and turned into blue smoke. She trembled and screamed like the cracking of tomb soil. "Yin yin!" Ashes grunt, green eyes flash to lock your blood. Soul nets buzz and heart hooks pull at the abyss. Cracks swallow legs, black smoke bites. You fall and I pull at waist bones and crack. The wax knelt and the tide could not be sealed. Wang Fu swallowed the village half regretful. How could our miracle reverse be shattered? Her hammer hung stuck in the stone edge of the abyss, her fingernails broke and the bloodline stretched an inch. The vision reflected the swirling green mist like the juice of 10,000 souls. The fear of unknown eternal calamity filled her chest. Her legs were weak and she hit the bloodstone goozy. The villagers roared and raised their claws to wipe the ends of their hair, leaving burning marks. But the blade flashed in Lin Yuyan's calm eyes. Her teeth bit her tongue and blood spurted out. Her mouth was full of sweetness. She murmured to herself through the broken glass. Remnant core fight between virtual and real clones. Luo Li's Real Torch Blood Array. Collection of fragments. After saying this, she pulled back. Luo Li's waist leaped into the blood mud with a pop, and the blood-red projection on the screen flashed. The door of the abyss opens, and the clone battle begins. Her soul fell and her soul was half pulled into the virtual realm of the game. In reality, her body was white and twitching, and the holes in her palms were rotten and bloodshot and covered the whites of her eyes. At the moment when reality and reality intertwined, Lin Yuyan's field of vision exploded into an old-fashioned game console scene. The eternal night of the Torch Festival in the mountain village, the tsunami of green flames blocking the end of the village road, the evil spirit king's clone, the gray and white rotten skin drum bone bead net squeaking and squirming, the black hole mouth glow, devouring the mid-air torch frame and the wooden beams popping and melting into nothingness. The soul screams and the needle pierces the membrane. The fishy rotten waves carry ashes and burn the lungs. She stepped on the virtual blood mud goozy and succumbed. The prototype of the handheld device was welded and melted. Green-eyed Shenmo's remnant soul was projected on the wall and the veins were raised and she blinked and laughed. "Goddess, the blood sacrifice will only last. The abyss clone will eat you and collect all the fragments. The core of the king's heart will be exposed and wait for the thorns." The clone's claws were like a sea of pus and threads on the face, and the putrid eyes were filled with the juice of thousands of corpses exploding. Lin Yuyan jumped back and shouted calmly, "Shin-mo? The ultimate curse." The green eyes of the remnant soul blinked deedy. Green mist sprayed out from the cracks in the gray face and whispered wetly, "Player regrets. Torch blood whirlpool curse. The bone beads of reincarnation are broken. The virtual and real doors are locked forever. Collect fragments to stab the core." At the altar of reality, Luo Li's eyes widened in shock and worship. She saw Lin Yuyan twitching white and falling into a half-empty shadow. She endured the pain of burning her shoulders and bones. She grabbed the remaining torch stalks from the ground and clicked to ignite the bloody formation of Mushua's talisman. The veins of the light blood-red diffusion wall were firm, and she roared like a female beast. "Yin Yin, the real-life blood array is here to help. I will burn the blood-soaked vortex to suppress the clone." The orange light of the flame sea entity penetrated the cracks in the virtual reality and went straight to Lin Yuyan's virtual domain. The villagers knelt down and paid homage, then rubbed their eyes feverishly. The veins of the bone beads under the gray skin of the waxy man were beating back to human color. They trembled and murmured in admiration. The goddess Luo's blood array burned the king's clone with a torch. Xunyan fell into the abyss and gathered fragments. Fuguang won my village, spent half his life. Regret your mistake and roar. Kneel down and worship forever. He waved his rotten arm in the air and smashed the ashes. Boom! His green eyes melted with pus and the steam exploded. Tears and blood flowed from his head and he smashed the stone. Boom! The chorus of worship shook his chest. 2 battles between the torch goddess and the king. The king's gray-green eyes retreat. In the abyss of the virtual realm, Lin Yuyan gathered 3 fragments of golden light into her handheld device and buzzed, and exploded in a blood whirlpool, forcing the king's clone hunchback to convulse and peel off its gray skin, exposing its twisted skeleton. The black hole mouth swallowed the light and shrank with a weak goo sound, and the green eyes blinked and flashed randomly. But the clone's claws swooped at the sea of pus and slapped her face. The rotten juices burned the eyes and burned her skin. She flashed sideways and rolled blood and mud. Gushy. Chu Tian's phantom suddenly appeared. The burnt remains of the body were yellow pus, eyes were shattered, wax skin peeled off bones and collapsed into ashes. The human flavor in the eyes flashed, and she murmured the last word B. Yen. The science is wrong. Wang Shusher blocks the claws. The phantom's rotten arm blocked the clone's claws. Kung, and the bone-crushing rain, and the soul was pulled into the black hole and just steamed into green smoke. His gray face finally turned from smile to sorrow to determination, blocking the moment of devouring. The blade exploded under Lin Yuyan's eyes, and she stabbed the fragments with her calm iron fist. Pft! The virtual and real torch blasted the sea of physical and mental cores, exposing the gray-white bead veins and dancing green mist. She roared Shunmo's curse. The reincarnation bone bead is broken. The virtual and real door is locked forever. The handheld prototype trembled. Click. Pull cracks, spraying orange flames straight into the exposed core. Zila zila. Scorched black cracks widening. Crack, crack. The clone roared. Broken glass whined. Crack. Green eyes split open and green pus rained down. Pap. The black hole pulled back and pulled the skeleton, collapsed and fell into the abyss with boom. Luo Li's real-life blood array and sea of flames climaxed with Hulong. She was almost swallowed by the clone's virtual claws through the cracks. Her shoulders were rotten and the flesh was eating away, and the black smoke wrapped around her arms and pulled her waist. She was on the verge of psychological collapse. Her eyes were bulging and turned gray in fear of the heat, and she screamed, Yenin! The clone's claws were swallowing my arms through the cracks. The black smoke was eating away at my bones and pulling my heart. It collapsed. The blood formation cannot be burned out. How can the wax-kneeling goddess win? Rhoda's pain surged through her spine and thousands of needles pierced her marrow. The green mist flooded the sky and the black tide of unknown eternal calamity overwhelmed her. She smashed her virtual claws with a hammer and flew into pieces. Tears and blood spurted out and she was on the verge of collapse. Her legs were weak and she was goozy in the blood formation flames. The villagers' wax tides froze, their pupils shrunk in fear, and they turned to worship and roared. Goddess Luo is about to be swallowed. Xunyan's heart core is exposed, Chu Huan's claws are shattered, and the king's clone's green eyes are split and pus rains fall into the abyss. The blood and fire of the 2 goddesses are sealed forever. The wax man climbed close to the edge of the blood array, and the human flavor revived in the broken bones and veins. They stared at Luo Li in trembling worship. Goddess Luo is about to collapse. The king's claws are devouring regrets. The torch is swirling. A miracle for the village. Lin Yuyan's heart core was exposed with iron steps in the virtual realm. The golden light of the soul fragments exploded in the handheld device, welding bones and melting iron heat. Her vision was blood red and black. The sky was swallowing and the pain was gouging out half of her soul. She calmly growled and stabbed the machine prototype into the giant bead. Pft! The torch and blood whirlpool curse exploded. Hula! The core. Kala was completely burnt and the green mist steamed into the sky like thousands of souls were liberated. The king's clone camel shadow and ashes and bone powder floated into the abyss. The soul network was cut off, and the green eyes were completely destroyed and silent. The crack between the virtual and the real closed with a pop. Her soul bounced back into reality. Her pale body smashed the bloody stone steps with a pop. The carrion in the palm hole turned into blood bubbles with a galoo. and the dim totem of the wooden shell of the prototype machine was extinguished forever. Luo Li fluttered her arms and hugged her tightly. Her eyes bulged and she burst into tears of ecstasy, worshipping and shouting. Yinan! The virtual thorn was exposed and the core shattered. The king's clone collapsed and the green soul-destroying net was broken. Chu Huan blocked his claws and laughed regretfully. He cursed the reincarnation and locked the door. I almost collapsed. The black smoke engulfs you and you stab the sky. The two goddesses kneel and roar. The shadows of the village are still. And the stars are stabbed. The ashes whisper and the incense disappears. And the altar talisman array and the bloodlight eternal wall pulsate like the heart of the village resurrected. The aftermath slowly descended. The cool night wind blew through the bloody mud. And the starlight sprinkled the altar square, reflecting the kneeling tide. The wax face was washed with tears and blood, and the human color was restored. The villagers slowly got up, rubbed their eyes, murmured in shock, and turned to worship the king. They sang softly. The torch goddess defeated the king in two ways, and the core of the heart was exposed and her own thorns were broken forever. The reincarnation was stopped by mistake 100 years ago, and the village torch was sealed forever. The strong man's bones were ashes and his skin was reborn. He knelt tremblingly at Lin Yuyan's feet and offered the torch stalk in his hands. The voice trembled like seeing a living god. Xin Yan, Luo Shun, blood sacrifice to save the village, regret your mistakes and offer a roar. The source of the player's souls will be locked forever. This fire will purify the string of bone beads into treasures. Your reputation will be passed down to the mountain village forever, and the status of a goddess will guard the fire. Keep it. His eyes were bulging with admiration and tears were streaming down his face. The orange light shimmering in the palm of his hand was ashes. The smell of rotten wood turned into a scent of wood. The villagers knelt down and smashed their heads. Dong dong, and the blood mist dispersed. The chorus slowly turned to thanksgiving. The goddess collects the treasure. Lin Yuyan's pale face slowed down, and she wrapped a cloth around her palms to stop the bleeding. She glanced at the kneeling tide with her iron eyes and nodded calmly. She turned away the fire and absorbed the prototype of the OM machine strung with bone beads into a new treasure shell. The totem of the wooden shell turned into a golden-orange eternal flame and was hidden. The aftertaste of the soul pain was like a light needle, but the heat of achievement surged in her heart. She murmured to Luo Li, "Harvest, the goddess of fame, the treasure machine will be forever sealed. The status will be the torch of the village, and the trivial matters will appease the wax." Luo Li's shoulders were wrapped with rotten flesh to stop the pus. Her ecstasy was soothing and she folded her arms in worship. Her eyes turned iron-blooded and tender. "Yin Yan, I almost collapsed and swallowed my claws. Your true and false pierced the core and burst my heart. Wax strong and held the treasure on my knees and smashed her head. God, the village has changed and the soul of Chu Chan and Mushu is in peace. But the green threads flicker under the ashes, and the shadow of eternal calamity remains?" The villagers gathered to deal with trivial matters, burying Chu Tian Muxu and Shun Mo's ashes, repairing the village and half-devouring the house. The remaining flames of the torch festival lit up the night, and the legend of the goddess Lin Luo was sung in the chorus, and her reputation is like a flickering torch that will never die. Lin Yuyan stood on the top of the altar, her hair was blown by the starry wind, her calm eyes were locked on the distant mountains, her palm was pulsing warmly, her chest was warmed by a sense of achievement like orange flames, but there was a low whisper in the abyss, her green eyes were locking her blood, and her soles were trembling with fear of unknown eternal catastrophe. The village elder, with a waxy face, slowly approached. He held the broken pages of the ancient book, and enlarged Mushua's talisman. He bowed and trembled. "Goddess, the history of 100 years ago has been revealed. The source of the machine is taboo and the city is now sealed forever. The reincarnation of your bloodline has stopped. Collect this book as a treasure. It will be the protector of the village. The reputation will be passed down in the city and mountains. The torch will be worshipped every year." The elder's eyes were bulging in fear. "I regret it, and thank you forever." Luo Li smiled and hugged her waist, her shoulder pain relieved and she burst into tears. "Yin Yan, the world has changed. The wax has been sacrificed from the roar to the kneeling holding the treasure book. The status of a goddess protects the village, the chest tightness is relieved, but the bloodline is tied. Green eternal shadow." Lin Yuyan held the treasure machine with iron, Orange flames warmed her palms and sneered and whispered. The harvest is great, the shadows remain to fight. It was a quiet night in the village, and the remaining light of the torch reflected the goddess's back, the unknown fear lurking in the soothing atmosphere. Lin Yuyan held the treasure in her hand, the warm orange flames pulsing in her palms like a heartbeat. The starry wind ruffled her hair and trembled slightly. The bloody mud on top of the altar made a soft squeaking sound on her sawls. The villagers knelt down to wash away the fresh tears and blood on their waxy faces, rubbed their eyes and turned to worship and shouted fervently, "Goddess Protector! Baoji Town, the torch seals the reincarnation forever." The village elder's face was pale and trembling after the wax skin was peeled off. He held the broken pages of the ancient book, his blood and talismans flashing, and his pulse was beating. He stared at her treasure machine, his eyes bulging with fear and admiration. He bowed low and shook like a candle in the wind. "Xin Yan. Luo Shan 100 years ago Jun was forbidden to sell Chengzhou King and burned the bone beads by mistake. Now your blood pricks the core and is forever shattered. The reputation of the villagers is spread throughout the city, and you worship it year after year." His withered fingers stretched out the edge of the ancient book and clicked, and the smell of rotten wood turned into a fragrance, and the villagers sang. Gratitude was deafening like thousands of torches burning whoosh, but the calm blade in Lin Yuyan's eyes suddenly flashed, and the treasure machine in the palm of her hand hummed faintly under the warmth. The green silk on the ashes was like a needle pricking the blood in her heart, and she muttered to herself like broken glass, "Victory, too early." Luo Li smiled and hugged her waist, wrapping the rotten flesh of her shoulders to stop the pus and hot pain. Her eyes were soft and tender, and she burst into tears of ecstasy. She threw her arms with a trembling roar. "Yan!" She knelt down holding the treasure book and shouted, "The goddess eternally passed on." The village was still and the torch flickered with vitality. Chu Chun and Mushue's soul were peaceful and remorseful. "We were so happy that the chest tightness was released. The status of the protector of the mountain changed the world." The villagers climbed close to their feet, and the skin was reborn and rough and trembling. Shaking, he held the torch in his hand and offered it with beads on it, the orange light flashing, his eyes bulging with admiration and tears of admiration, and he smashed his head with stones. "Zhong zhong." The blood mist exploded, and the low roar turned soft. "Luo Shun. The black smoke is about to collapse. Bite your arms and pull your heart. Your blood is burning in the sea of flames." King's clone, Shun Yan's virtual thorn is exposed and the core is shattered and the green is destroyed. The village regrets and shouts, kneeling now and thanking forever. The heat waves scorched bones have faded, the night wind is cool and the blood and mud are steaming in the square, and the stars are shining on the faces of the kneeling people, reflecting the soft light of gratitude. But in an instant the bubbles of the glue in the ashes deep under the stone steps of the altar burst. Green mist sprang out like thousands of needles and filaments, locking Lin Yuyan's bloodline, buzzing iron hook and pulling at her heart. Her knees went weak and her face turned pale and blood turned back. The cracks in the palm machine cross-sprayed green pus, burning her eyes and burning her nose, and the putrid intestines of the rotten corpses were wet and sticky, burning her face and burning her lungs. The villagers knelt and stiffened, the eyes of the strong wax man shrank with fear, and the newly born human skin peeled off with ash, trembling and crawling back, roaring and then screaming. Ashes are silken and green. How can the king's heart be broken and his green eyes extinguished? How can the bloodline of the goddess be locked? The soul network is cut off, and the village's torch is sealed forever. The door to eternal calamity is cracked at the bottom of the abyss. The village elder's ancient book fell out of blood and mud. His withered face waxed and his pupils were bulging, fearing that hot tears would spurt out. He rubbed his eyes and stared at the green silk treasure-eating machine, muttering as despair as the earth cracked in the tomb. "No! The goddess's bloodline is at the center of reincarnation. The king's residual silk is chewing the source, and old man Wang's ashes and bones are floating in the abyss, whispering for eternity, and it will never be sealed." Luo Lin Yuyan's waist was tightly bound by the iron arms, her shoulders were rotten and the flesh was chewing, black smoke wrapped around her fingers and her bones were squeaking. Her eyes bulged out in ecstasy, she suddenly collapsed in fear of heat, and screamed and the needle pierced her membrane. "Yan Yan!" The green thread hooked through the heart and the blood vessels buzzed, The treasure machine cracked green pus, sprayed out putrid odor, smoked the lungs, chewed the lungs and bitten the palms. The holes in your palms expanded, your knees were weak, your soul ached, and the light needle turned into gouging out the flesh. Our victory was shattered when we were about to collapse. How could the village be resurrected and the starlight be erupted into ashes and drowned by the black tide? The villagers sang in gratitude, smashing their knees on the bloody mud and crawling away. The tide of fear roared in their chests. I regret kneeling wrongly. The afterglow of the torch cannot suppress the abyss gate. Lin Yuyan's vision was filled with blood and blackness, and the sky was swallowed up. The green wire iron hook yanked her soul halfway into the Gulu whirlpool of the abyss. The altar at the sole of her feet collapsed into endless cracks. The gray mist rolled like the intestines of thousands of souls. The pain in her soul ripped out her heart like charcoal plugging the marrow and bones. The blade of the blade exploded under her calm eyes, and she roared with iron teeth biting her tongue, and the sweet blood spattered all over Luo Li's waxy face. The remaining silk. The source is eternal calamity, sacrificing the soul and half-detonating the blood sacrifice. After saying this, she pulled Luo Li's waist and jumped to the edge. Pa, and the blood rolled out. Mud, the palm machine welds bones to hot melt the golden-orange eternal flame totem. The green thread expands Zila, burnt black and peels off, but the afterimage of the king at the bottom of the abyss appears. The gray and white rotten skin bulges on the hunchback, and the black hole mouth Gulu whispers wetly and mocks. Bloodline, all the fragments are collected, and the door to eternal tribulation of reincarnation is fully opened. The iron wire of the soul net wraps around her legs and ankles. Black smoke gnaws at the marrow, and gnaws at the bones. Her pale body twitches, and the flesh in her palms turns to blood bubbles. Gulu expands her eyes white and silky green. Luo Li's eyes widened in horror, seeing green threads piercing her body and eating her heart. She endured the pain of her shoulders and bones, and dug out the torch stalks from the ground to click, and soaked them in blood to ignite the remaining formation. The orange flames whispered through the stone veins and dong-dong, and the heartbeat of thousands of souls. She roared and the mother beast was on the verge of collapse. Yinan, sacrifice half of your soul? I burn blood to sacrifice the flames to press the green silk, and the wax is horrifying to roar. The village is destroyed and cannot be sealed. The flame-sea entity's orange light penetrates the cracks and burns the residual image of the king. Zila, the bone-peeling bead net kala breaks. The villagers' bone veins under the gray skin jump in fear, and they tremble and kneel down and hit their heads. Boom! The blood mist explodes. Luotian flames burn the king's silk. Xun Yan's sacrifice detonates the blood chakra. Will the village regret its life and death? The crack between the virtual and the real exploded again. Lin Yuyan's soul fell into the abyss of the game forever. Her vision exploded. The old-fashioned picture was filled with blood and mud, and she sank into a soft goozy. The gray-white bead veins of the king's remaining core jumped and sprayed green mist. She approached with iron steps and shouted calmly. The ultimate blood sacrifice. The end of reincarnation. The remaining green thread blinked Didi. The hunchback shadow's gray face sprayed green pus from the cracks and murmured. Player source. Regret reincarnation and eat the blood of the goddess. She locked her eyes and stabbed the treasure machine into the giant beast, sacrificing half of her soul for gold. The light explosion merged into a blood whirlpool, and the orange flames of the torch blasted together to expose the pulsating chakra. The scorched black cracks expanded and green pus rained papa, and sprinkled the virtual realm. The king wailed and the broken glass screamed creak. The black hole backfired and the skeleton collapsed boom. The ashes and bone powder at the bottom of the abyss drifted away, and the soul net was forever cut off. Luo Li's real-life blood array flames climaxed with Hulong. She was almost pulled down by the remaining silk threads, swallowing her arms, black smoke biting her bones, her eyes bulging deathly gray, fearful of the heat, screaming. Yin Yin, sacrifice half of the soul to detonate the nuclear blast, wailing and collapsing. I can't be suppressed by the flames. The green silk is swallowed up. The door to the destruction of Wahao village is open. The rotting pain rushed through the spine and stabbed the marrow. The green mist flooded the sky and the black tide pressed down. She smashed the virtual silk with a clang, and the tears and blood spurted out of her legs. The villagers turned to worship and collapsed in fear. Xun Yan was sacrificed to stab the nuclear explosion. The king held with green threads to destroy the bone powder and floated into the abyss, and the Luo Shun sea of flames crushed the village seal. The wax man crawled on the edge of the blood array. The bone beads were broken into ashes and human traces were destroyed. The trembling worshippers stared at Luo Li. The Luo Shun was almost swallowed. The reincarnation of Shun Yan's blood sacrifice was interrupted, and the villagers regretted extinguishing the fire and detonating the blood array forever. But the flames of the blood sacrifice spread out of control and exploded on the stone steps of the altar. A tsunami of orange flames mixed with green and gray mist swallowed the square. The village house collapsed and the wooden beams burned. The flames from the torch festival turned back into a sea of fire and ashes. The villagers knelt down and peeled off their bones. The blood-burning light talisman in the ancient book of the village elder flashed buzz at the end, and the wax on his withered face melted and his eyes bulged, and he finally whispered Mushua's last wish. Mushua, the soul is in peace, the goddess's blood sacrifice is eternal, the village is destroyed and the fire is sealed, and the seal is complete. His ashes collapsed into the sea of flames and boom. Only a wax shadow of Mushua's phantom soul appeared in white mist and disappeared instantly. The connection between reality and reality was broken with a pop. Lin Yuyan's half-dead soul bounced back to reality, and her pale body pop hit the bloodstone beside the flames. The wooden shell of the prototype of her palm phone, Kara, cracked and turned into ashes. The totem was extinguished forever, and the golden orange flame disappeared. The aftertaste of the soul's pain was like thousands of needles stabbing the bottom of the heart forever. The threads of blood reincarnation were cut green but the shadows were low and deep. Luo Li fluttered her arms and dragged her away from the sea of flames. Her shoulder was rotten and the flesh was scorched with black smoke. Her eyes were bulging and she was ecstatic, tears and blood spurted out in admiration and she screamed, Yenin, sacrificing half of the soul to stab the core and wailing into the abyss, destroying the virtual and real treasures, turning the village into ashes, destroying the fire and extinguishing the wax, extinguishing the soul of Mushua, sealing the source of the eternal solid king and locking the door for eternity. I pulled you out of danger. The roar of the ashes of the strong elder stopped. The village was quiet, and the ashes were blown by the wind. The heat wave burned the earth, the incense mixed with rotten ash hit the nose and burned the throat. The dim flames of the altar closed the cracks in the abyss. The gray mist dispersed before dawn. The village ruins were extinguished, and only the heaps of embers continued to hum. The gray light of dawn sprinkled the marketplace. Luo Li carried Lin Yuyan down the winding path. Her shoulders and flesh ached like embers. She panted and tightened her iron arms around her white best friend. Her eyes were soft and fearful of turning to make her tears dry. She whispered into the wind, Yan, back to the city, Chu Tianyong's lost soul is in peace. Elder Shen Mushua's wax is all gray. The village is destroyed and Fengyong is sacrificed, but you sacrifice half of your soul. The shadows whisper, we grow up and face unknown fears. Lin Yuyan's eyes were half closed, her blood calmed down, her palms were warm and her pulse was weak. The soul pain was stabbed in the heart and the heat was overwhelming. She whispered to broken ice. Growing up, the curious girl turned into a fighting soul. Luo Li accompanied her to seal the source. She was satisfied and relieved but the aftertaste remained. The cold mountain wind blew the ribbons in her hair, and the smell of gray flakes was faint. The black shadow of the distant mountain village was extinguished silently. The legend of the famous goddess was cut off from the mountain city and only remained in her heart. In the sea of lights in the city's high-rise buildings, Lin Yuyan woke up from her bed in the apartment. The neon lights outside the window flickered like the shadow of cracks, and the gray marks on her palms trembled faintly. Her soul ached like a needle pricking her awake every night. She sat up and scanned the room calmly. Luo Li made porridge and wrapped a new cloth around her shoulders. Her eyes were iron-blooded and she hugged them tenderly. Yan, March has passed, the fire in Mengsuan market has been extinguished, and there are no ashes. Chu Yong is lost but we live. Work continues with curiosity and growth is refreshing. Release your breasts. Lin Yuyan nodded and held Luo Li's hand firmly, suppressing the shadows with warmth and smiled softly. Seal the source, fight with shadows. But in the dead of night, there was a whisper on the bedside, the swaying torch whirring, the abyss of ashes and green eye locks, the low voice of the blood. The fear of unknown eternity lightly trembled the heartstrings on the soles of her feet. She closed her eyes calmly. and Luo Li slept with her, breathing evenly. The aftertaste of terror lingered in the contentment of relief, and the shadow of reincarnation awaited a new battle. But at the moment of release, Gulu was whispered deep in the ashes of Wang's heart core. A trace of green eyeshadow flickered and locked onto Lin Yuyan's bloodline. The iron hook of the soul net pulled her heart buzz again. The cracks in the virtual and real abyss opened and pulled her soul fragments down. The fear of unknown eternal calamity surged again and her feet were weak. The black tide swallowed her vision. Luo Li's fearful eyes bulged and she clutched at her. Yan Yan. Wang Suhun pulled the abyss. Can't it be sealed?